Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у щах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello everyone, I am the Enforcer and welcome to the breaking news. We have a absolutely massive amount of breaking news tonight, but some of y'all may be noticing that there has been a slight change to how the stream has been run. Because Enforcer Matt is unfortunately not going to be here with us tonight. Enforcer Matt is sick with allergies at the moment and is not able to be live on air. But nevertheless, we do have an absolutely massive amount of news to cover over the past 24 hours from around the world. As we have been able to hear from inside of the inner streets of the city of Moscow, a top Russian general involved in the inner circles of the Russian Ministry of Defense and the actual nitty-gritty details of operating the entirety of the war in Ukraine has been killed today as a car bomb went off on his daily walk to the Ministry of Defense, killing him instantly and knocking out one of the most important people involved in the war in Ukraine, at least at this point in the Russian military. Meanwhile, we have also been able to hear of major news happening elsewhere around the world, as we have been able to hear that inside the area of India and Pakistan, Pakistani armed forces have been racing to the border in massive amounts. We have loads of footage coming from literally every single corner of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan today, showing that armed forces are racing into quite literally every single direction possible as they're attempting to try and make their way to the border near the Jammu and Kashmir, as well as the areas near the Punjab, as the Indians and Pakistanis appear to be in an absolute state of war. We have also been able to hear that the Indians have now made it incredibly clear that their blockage of water going into the Islamic Republic of Pakistan is not going to be a temporary measure, it is going to be a permanent measure, as we have now been able to hear that there is a very significant diversion of water that will be happening from all tributaries heading into the Indus River, as it appears that the Republic of India is going to be taking the absolute severe actions and reprisals against the Islamic Republic of Pakistan for the supposed attacks that were conducted the other day by Pakistani-backed terrorist forces inside of the region. We have also been able to hear that the Islamic Republic of Pakistan has stated that this is war on top of the firefights that occurred in the Lipa Valley last night, and it does appear that both sides are poised to continue on through this inevitable war that pretty much has already been created as of yesterday. Nevertheless, we have also been able to hear even more news outside of India and inside the war in Ukraine directly, as well as inside the Middle East. We have been able to hear that the United States has now approached an entirely new plan with the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan, which the Islamic Republic appears to have already outright rejected. We've also been able to hear that the Houthis fired a long-range missile at northern Israel today near to the port of Haifa, and it does appear that the Israelis were able to intercept the missile before it was able to impact the city of Haifa. Meanwhile, we have also been able to hear that the United States of America has stated that China will have to give the United States something for them to end the trade war, and we've also been able to hear some additional statements as well about the current situation and the current U.S. official stance on the Islamic Republic of Iran. Meanwhile, inside of the war in Ukraine, we have also been able to hear some significant news as well, as we have been able to hear that at least at this moment, it appears that the Ukrainian armed forces have been able to stop several Russian counterattacks in multiple important fronts, including the ones at Pokrovsk, Toretsk, and others. The Russian Federation has attempted to try and regain the initiative on the front line over the past 24 hours with these counterattacks, but it appears that the counterattacks have stopped due to Ukrainian stronger actions on the defensive, and it appears that the Ukrainians will be returning back into the offensive on most of these fronts and still attempting to drive the Russians out of these critical cities or critical strategic areas. There is an absolutely major amount of news tonight, a significant amount, I must put in. But before we get into this, I do have to note that there are going to be some limited changes tonight to tonight's stream due to the lack of a co-host. And there will be, it's really more so housekeeping things, but I want to let you all know these before we get into the show. One, there will not be a pool of live chat questions gathered through the course of the entire stream that are then belted out towards the end of the stream. Live chat questions will actually be answered in the live chat question at the end of the stream. So if you have a question that you want to have answered, put it in towards the end of the stream in the live chat when I say that we're moving into the live chat segment, because that's the only way I'll be able to compile and get questions for all of you all tonight. Also, another thing that I do have to point out is that I will be running polls on major situations going on. Unfortunately, I did not pre-plan the polls. This was quite literally a last-minute thing that happened, literally a minute before we went on air. Matthew said he was too sick to do this, and he hopped off. So I do not have any polls of my own that have been made at this moment to be able to run. So I'm going to have to be trying to come up with them on the fly. If they do not seem like they're expertly crafted, that's really the reason why. But nevertheless, I will be trying to make sure to ask you all about some of the pressing questions of the major situations that are going on in the world today the best I can. But nevertheless, we have absolutely major news to get into today. And moving on into Moscow, we have been able to hear probably some of the most significant news that we've heard of, at least as far as Ukrainian attacks go against the Russian Federation's top brass that have been conducting the war in Ukraine for the largest part of the entirety of the conflict. Moving on into the city of Moscow, we have been able to hear that there was a car explosion that went off earlier today. And I want to make sure to show you all the clip here before we actually talk about exactly what this was. Here it is from a little bit of a side angle here. You see someone walking alongside it right there, and then the car explodes. Quite literally, impressive fashion, to be entirely honest. The car literally blew itself to pieces, but what is very interesting about this is that we were able to get a lot of additional information about who this guy was and what kind of a role he was filling inside the Russian Federation's Ministry of Defense, as the Twitter is running incredibly slowly. And we all love to know that the Twitter runs slowly. The Twitter always runs the slowest whenever we need it the most, which is always a wonderful thing because it makes me have to fill up all of the dead air as we try and wait for the Twitter to load, and the Twitter does not appear to want to be loading. A massive thanks to Elon for making sure the Twitter servers always run incredibly well and incredibly efficiently. But nevertheless, it appears that we're finally getting our Twitter running right here any moment now. It only takes about 5 hours to get a single Twitter post pulled up. Elon says this is the absolute breaking level of efficiency. Us having been on Twitter before Elon owned it, I gotta be honest with y'all, this is incredibly slow. But we're still waiting here, and any minute now, the Twitter will entirely load. I'm terribly sorry about the delay, everyone. We're trying to get this up here so that way I can make sure to list off the guy's official position and the kind of role that he filled inside the Russian Federation. Oh, look at that. We got another third of Twitter loaded up on screen. Any minute now, the whole thing will show up, and we'll be able to make sure to tell y'all exactly every little minute detail about the guy that was involved in the attack and was directly killed immediately today. As you can see, this is the original clip right here that I showed y'all but this was one of the angles of the attack that occurred today inside of Balashika in the eastern area of Moscow, which eliminated, and here's the direct rank, it was an incredibly long one, so that's why I wanted the post to load so I could get it correct. It eliminated the deputy head of the main operations directorate of the general staff of the Russian armed forces, meaning that this guy was actually up there at the very top. As far as the Russian Ministry of Defense is structured, it's actually structured quite similarly to the U.S. Department of Defense, at least at its highest levels, as the Russian president is the commander-in-chief of Russian armed forces. The Russian Minister of Defense fills the exact same role as the U.S. Secretary of Defense does. Then, from there, you move on into the General Staff, which would be called the Chief of Staff here inside the United States. This guy was the deputy head of the main operations directorate of the General Staff, meaning that he actually was at the second to highest level of the third highest level of military operations in the Russian Federation, outside of the Minister of Defense directly, which would be Sergei Shoigu in the past, and nowadays is some kind of a banker guy that I never can remember the name of, and under Vladimir Putin as well. There's only two people that would be above this guy, which is the Minister of Defense and Vladimir Putin, and this guy in particular right here, the third highest guy in the Russian Ministry of Defense, was completely wiped out as a result of this bombing that occurred today in the eastern area of Moscow. The attack was wildly important in the scale and kind of scope that it will have on the decrease of efficiency of the Russian Ministry of Defense and its ability to continue to wage war. It appears that at this point, the Russian Ministry of Defense is continuing to lose a decent amount of higher officials throughout the entirety of the war due to attacks like these, and it is a somewhat serious question if the Russian Federation will begin to lose a lot of its combat abilities, or more so strategic abilities, from the losses that they've been seeing inside of the Russian General Staff. And to really quickly try and put a question up on this, will the Russian Federation suffer severe lacks of coordination? And let me see if I can fit this all in. Coordination due to the general's death. And let me see if I can put that in really quickly. This is going to be the most masterful poll. Once again, we're coming up with these right on the bat. But I'm trying to make sure that we can put it together as quickly as we can on stream. And yes, the general's loss will be severe. Let's see. Yes, we're just going to put yes, no, and maybe. That's probably the easiest thing for me to do, because we don't want to have too much time where we're just stalling on stream as I try and put together polls. But there is a poll right there, and let's see what folks are thinking about that right now, because it is quite a significant thing that this kind of a general at this high of a level ended up being killed today. Of course, we have not seen the Ukrainians come out directly and claim responsibility for the attack, but once again, we do know that the Ukrainians have a very important need to be able to try and wipe out these sorts of folks, and make sure that they're not able to cause as much significant damage to the state of Ukraine over the course of the war that they have been so far. We also understand that at the exact same time outside of Moscow, there was also another car explosion that happened inside the city of Bryansk as well. And we have been able to hear that a car carrying the leading designer of electronic warfare and electronic warfare systems for the Russian army was also killed today in a separate car bombing inside of Bryansk, which we can see right here. And we see the explosion. There wasn't any audio to the clip. A little bit surprising. I actually thought there was going to be a boom. That's why I got quiet there. But nevertheless, we were able to see that a general and one of the top electronic warfare systems designers of the Russian Federation were both killed today in what appears to be systematic car bombings. It does appear that the state of Ukraine may be taking more direct covert actions through the SBU to be able to try and target and eliminate top Russian officials and engineers that have been helping the Russian Federation to continue to fight the war in Ukraine to the best levels of efficiency possible. It also appears that the Russian Federation has been taking some more significant losses in other categories because of this as well. And I've seen some people saying some different questions. For example, like Vegalon said, he isn't very high up anymore, is he? Now everyone in the MOD is 6 feet above him, and I'd have to agree with that. It appears that everyone in the Ministry of Defense is about 6 feet above him at this point, because he's going to be 6 feet under from this point forward. But nevertheless, It appears that some people are actually casting doubt onto whether or not the Ukrainians were conducting these attacks today, as a lethargic and luminous layman stated that this wasn't Ukraine, it was Russian mob infighting. I'm pretty sure of it. And I'd have to say that I would doubt that a little bit, because Russian mob infighting would really not reach to this kind of a high level of the Russian Federation's government. And not only that, that is no way for the mob to ingratiate themselves to Putin, which largely is the overlord of the mobs, the oligarchs, and the army of the Russian Federation, is to go and kill someone above them without the approval of Putin or anyone else. If Putin wanted this guy removed, he would have just simply removed him from the Ministry of Defense. I would have to say that there is absolutely no way, shape, or form where that's Russian mob infighting to conduct a car bombing on a top Russian general. That would be highly unlikely. We have seen, however, that in some lower ranked instances, such as captains of Kilo-class submarines, some of them actually have been killed by gangs inside of Russia due to different reasons. We heard that one of them apparently had unpaid debts that they were then executed over, but nevertheless, I would have to say that I highly doubt at this moment that this would be some sort of a Russian mob infighting incident. Nevertheless, it does appear that a lot of people have actually put in their opinion on what kind of a loss will the Russians be suffering from the death of this top general. And the question was, will the Russian Federation suffer severe lacks of coordination due to the general's death? And it seems that a decent amount of people, 41%, said yes, 31% said no, and about 28% of people said maybe so. But it does appear that quite a decent amount of people are believing that there will be a severe lack of coordination from the Russian Federation's armed forces due to the general's death. And I would have to be entirely honest, I think that there will be at least some decent loss of coordination for the time seen now, well on into the future. I would have to say that at this point, considering that the loss of this guy has been one that we've never really seen so far by death or removal, we've never seen a removal of a person in this position by either means over the course of the entirety of the war, and it does appear that a lot of people are also talking about bots. Sorry, folks, I'll be trying to get to those in a second. Really didn't have a lot of time to mentally prepare for having to multitask and everything, because, once again, this was a little bit of a last-minute change that nobody expected, especially myself, but nevertheless, it does appear that the Russian Federation will most likely be taking some significant loss of coordination, at least temporarily, due to the loss. But let's see really quickly if we can try and find these bots. If folks would like to help me out in the chat, make sure to tag me and let me know who the bots are, so that way I can go through and try and get them, because I gotta tell y'all, this is something that usually when this happens, I usually have about a couple of hours to prepare for this. Tonight I had 1 minute, so it was a little bit more of a faster thing, and I haven't really had time to be able to exactly get ready for this whole sort of a deal of running the entire stream on my own. But we will try and see if we can find the bots. Hopefully people can help me out with that. So if you say bot alert, make sure to tag my name and make sure to let me know who the bots are, so that way I can get them. But nevertheless, we are going to be moving on from that little bit of news and on into the India-Pakistan situation, because we have been able to hear of some major significant developments that are still going on at this point inside of the Indian subcontinent. As we have been able to hear, that it appears that the Islamic Republic of Pakistan is now responding in pretty significant form at this point against the Republic of India by moving in entire armies of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan's armed forces into the area of the border, as it does appear that they will be preparing for a major armed confrontation with the Republic of India here within the very near future. And we can see them moving on in right here rapidly. And we can see them continuing to move in right there, and that's the end of the clip. But moving on from that and into our next one, we can also see another clip of Pakistan armed forces moving towards the border. This was reported to be south of the city of Lahore, which we can see right here as well. And we can see them continuing to move in somewhat larger numbers. And it appears that from the video that we're seeing right here, this may be a mechanized unit or some sort of a engineer's unit, possibly, as there's a decent amount of recovery vehicles inside of it, and also some armored personnel carriers as well. So it may also possibly be some kind of a mechanized unit of the Pakistani army. We also were able to see some additional clips as well closer to the city of Lahore of more troop movements that were being conducted by rail. Every single one of these clips has a lot of music to them. And also we did get rid of the Enforcer's biggest fan. We've had a lot of bots coming in like that recently that try and claim that they're like Enforcer related and they say that we're pro-Russian or they're pro-Russian, which we are not. Absolutely. Everyone already knows that. But we can see the Pakistan Armed Forces moving in mass at this point to the border areas, and even farther north, just south of Islamabad, which is the capital of Pakistan, near to the area of Rawalpindi. We were able to see mass military deployments heading towards the border, near to the area of Kashmir in this clip right here as well. In this area, we actually did get to see, along with the railroads near to Lahore, a large movement of armored units, or as they would be called, an armored brigade or an armored division, making their way on up towards the area of the border, as it appears that they will now be preparing for a major armed confrontation with the Republic of India. As many people know, official hostilities began yesterday as firefights broke out throughout the entirety of the Lipa Valley, and we were able to hear that apparently those firefights have largely started to die down in the daylight hours of today, but at this moment right now, we have not been able to get any additional details or information as to whether the firefights picked up through the course of the night again tonight. All we know at this moment is that the Islamic Republic of Pakistan is apparently working towards preparing for an actual armed conflict, and there are significant reasons to believe that that would be the case, at least for right now. And moving on into that reason, it is because we have been able to hear that the Republic of India has made it incredibly clear that they are not going to be creating a temporary blockage of the flow of water into the Indus River. They are actually going to be making it permanent. There was a statement made today that sounded inflammatory, at least in its outright statement, which would seem to just be rhetoric, because the Indian government stated that they were working on a short, medium, and long-term measure so that not a drop of water goes to Pakistan. And it appears that we also were able to hear right after that 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 wasn't just rhetoric, that was actually a true statement made by the Republic of India's government. As India's Water Resource Minister, Patil, after a meeting with the Interior Minister Shah, stated, "We made a roadmap with 3 steps. The government is working on short, medium, and long-term measures so that not a drop of water goes to Pakistan. Desilting of rivers will be done to divert them." So in basic form, to explain what he's talking about right here, he is saying a lot like I was saying last night, that they are going to be moving on away from allowing any water from flowing into Pakistan again, and even if the dams can only hold back water for 3 days from this point, they are still going to be diverting the path of all of the tributaries rivers heading into the Indus River and instead force them to flow through India, possibly to the Ganges River or some other major body of water where they could then deposit themselves into the Arabian Sea or the Bay of Bengal instead of allowing them back into Pakistan. This means that as of right now, Pakistan is not going to be having any kind of freshwater sources heading into their country from this point forward. It is, in fact, going to be a permanent situation that the Islamic Republic of Pakistan is going to be completely deprived of any kind of water, 90% of their fresh water, indefinitely from this point forward, at least according to the direct statements of the Republic of India's government today. That is something that lets us know that war is here. There is no way to avoid war at this point, and there's also a little bit of an important thing to note with this as well. Some people have said that because of prior border skirmishes, including one that happened from 2020 to 2021 between Pakistan and India, which resulted in nearly 300 dead on both sides, that this will just be another border skirmish such as that. But I do want to make this quite clear. This is the only time that we've ever seen the 1960 Water Treaty rescinded. The only time ever, in every single border skirmish that has ever happened in the 21st century and the 20th century, including the wars as well, the Water Treaty was never rescinded from what we were able to find today. This is the first time that the Indians have backed out of the 1960 Water Treaty and have started to deprive the Islamic Republic of Pakistan long-term of their water source. This means that war is here. The Islamic Republic of Pakistan doesn't really have the choice to just ignore the fact that they're not having 90% of the fresh water that was once flowing through their country non-existent at this point, because they will start to see that the majority of their country will begin to die of drought. Agricultural industries will completely collapse due to the lack of water, and major industrial concerns will also not be able to conduct any industrial activities due to the complete loss of their water sources. it is a situation that is unparamounted in precedence, at least for the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. There is really no way for them to work around this at this point, and this means that unless if they're able to meet India's demands, which pretty much have to be unconditional at this point, they would see that there is absolutely no way to restore their access to water unless if they go to war, meaning that India is pretty much at this point forcing the Pakistanis into a war over the Pahulgram massacre that occurred a couple of days ago because of their blockage of the water into the Indus rivers. We have also been able to hear at the exact same time as well, while all of the major diplomatic developments were going on today, that the Islamic Republic of Pakistan is already on high alert with a large amount of its armed forces moving towards the border. And it is now stated that Pakistan is expecting an attack from India within the coming days. We have been able to hear already that it appears that India is going to be conducting a preemptive attack on Pakistan, because we have been able to hear that they have now rescinded their ceasefire treaty with the Pakistanis as well, and at any moment this now means that they could open fire onto the Pakistanis and begin a full-scale war. We have also been able to hear that the foreign ministry of Pakistan has also set up an operations room due to the recent tensions with India, as we are now ticking down the hours from the border skirmishes, which have pretty much started the war, all the way up till the actual conventional war, which will be breaking out here most likely within several days, estimated at this point. We have also been able to hear some additional news as well, that the Indian government has now been taking even more drastic measures within the area of Jammu and Kashmir, which is currently under the control of the Republic of India, as they are now conducting sweeping searches of houses and residential areas, looking for possible Pakistani sympathizers that may conduct further acts of terror within the region, which we can see in the clip right here. We see them conducting a search of some kind of a water tank, I think, maybe? But that's the end of that clip right there, and moving on from that one and into our next one, we also got to see another clip right here where Indian security forces were once again patrolling a street in Jammu and Kashmir on film. We now see them moving through the streets. We see them continuing to conduct searches of private residences. And that was the end of the clip, but once again showing that they are starting to begin massive searches for possible sympathizers and also weapons caches that may be found within the area of Jammu and Kashmir. Meanwhile, we have also been able to see that the home of one of the terrorists that conducted the attack at Pahulgram was blown up by Indian forces. I didn't really get the whole point of blowing up the building that the guy lived in, but they did blow it up nevertheless, which we can see right here in this clip. And that was one hell of an explosion. Like, I don't really think anyone could get around that one. But beyond that, it does appear that India and Pakistan are on the path to war at this point, and I really want to ask you all about that, because considering that we have already seen massive armed skirmishes happening yesterday, and the Indians are now cutting off Pakistan's access to 90% of their fresh water, a lot of people have been wondering, and really quickly, I got to try and make sure to set up this poll correctly, will Pakistan and India enter a full conventional war? And now I have to be able to try and come up with the question segments, or the question answers for y'all. Yes, there will be a conventional war. There will be a full-scale war. Others might say maybe it will be a border skirmish. Let's see. I accidentally posted that poll a little bit early, it seems. But nevertheless, we'll just go with those two answers because it's either going to be a border skirmish at this point or it's going to be a major conventional war at this point. And hopefully, we'll be able to see what most people are thinking, whether it will be a full-scale conventional war or a minor skirmish, because there are decent arguments for both, although there is a stronger argument for one than the other. For one, we have seen that India and Pakistan have always had a largely unstable relationship in the past with each other, and that there has been a decent amount of border skirmishes. We can actually pull that up. Let's see, wars between India and Pakistan, which is apparently a frequently asked question at this point. But to show you all this really quickly, there have been a large amount of border skirmishes just within the past 10 years alone, as we have been able to see that there was a border skirmish between 2016 and 2018. There was also a border skirmish in 2019, and there was also a border skirmish in 2020 and 2021, meaning that it's not unheard of for the Indians and the Pakistanis to fire on each other and pretty much enter a state of war nearly without actually going into a full-blown conventional war. On the other hand, there is also a fairly strong argument that this actually will be a war, because we have never seen the Indians rescind the 1960 water treaty and also go out of their way to divert the water from all the tributaries elsewhere to ensure that 90% of the fresh water is going to be entering the Republic of Pakistan. It appears that at this point, a lot of people are believing that it will be a full-scale war, because, of course, it seems that these actions are so escalatory from both sides that there really is no way to avoid it at this point. And it appears that a lot of people are saying that on the poll as well, which I believe that this will have to be the last poll I run, because once again, folks, I really didn't have a couple of hours to do this. I had 1 minute to try and figure out everything I would need to do to be able to run this stream tonight, so I might sound a little bit scatterbrained because I'm all over the place trying to figure out how to run this. Just really quickly to lay this out, usually I have the full time I need to prepare for the stream to be able to figure out mentally how to do this solo whenever that happens, but this was literally done at 9 o'clock Central Time, which is the time zone we're on, and the stream goes live pretty much at 9:01, so I had exactly 1 minute to try and mentally prepare to do the whole thing solo. But nevertheless, will Pakistan and India enter a full conventional war? 63% of people said yes, there will be a full-scale war, and 37% said maybe it will be a border skirmish instead. But nevertheless, it does appear that a large majority of people are believing that it will end up becoming a full-scale war instead. And I would have to say that I would largely agree with the majority at this point that there really is no way that India and Pakistan will be able to go into a border skirmish rather than a full-scale conventional war. Conventional war appears to be on the horizon once again. Depriving 90% of the Pakistani population of their water source will force them pretty much into a constructed genocide at this point. So Pakistan really has no other choice but to go to war with India to be able to try and get access to the waters inside of the mountains of Kashmir and to be able to begin the flow back down the Indus rivers and keep the water coming to the citizenry that requires the water, which is 90% of the population. So with that in mind, I would have to say that I would agree with a large majority. But nevertheless, it is a very interesting situation in the region. And also another thing I'd like to add in is that we still have not really seen an official Chinese reaction to the entire situation so far as well. And we've also been able to hear a official statement from the President of the United States about the situation. It was an audio recording made today on Air Force One by the press. And it was a very interesting one because I don't really know if the president actually has an official stance on the situation so far. The United States has a very special kind of a standing, or at least a position, that has existed inside this region. It's actually a little bit of a splotchy one. In the past, we actually were not a big fan of India. We were actually a much larger fan of Pakistan. During the beginning of the Cold War, India actually was more aligned with the Soviet Union and the Communist Chinese than it was with the United States. And for that reason, we had to find someone in the region that was more so friendlier to the United States. And considering that Pakistan was the enemy of India, and we weren't really friendly with India, we ended up creating an alliance with Pakistan that largely has lasted in some way, shape, or form all the way up until the present day, with Pakistan and the United States sharing a decent amount of camaraderie with each other on some kinds of particular instances. However, in recent times, we've actually seen that this has started to change, as India's economic prominence in the world has started to skyrocket. Throughout most of the nation of India's history, their economy has been practically insignificant and not even really worth talking about. Even in 2010, their economy was about 1.6 trillion, which is equivalent to Canada's, and considering that they were so far around around the world, and that we really didn't need a major economic trading partner at that point, it wasn't really that significant of an ordeal. However, India in the present day is a totally different story, as it's now reached a whopping $3.4 trillion GDP, making it, I believe, one of the largest economies in the world right now. I think it's about the 6th largest national economy globally at this point, behind Germany, Japan, the United States, and China. Well, China and the United States, to put them in proper order. Meaning that India is a major economic power player in the world right now, and is continuing to rapidly become one as time continues to pass by. With that in mind, we've seen that the United States has not only started to chum up to the Indians for that reason, but we've also started to chum up to the Indians because the Indians are a natural obstacle to the Chinese having complete control of the entirety of the Indian Ocean area through the One Belt One Road program. We've seen that the United States has started to court the Indians, along with several other countries who also have their own spheres of influence, to try and vie for the Indians' favor in this modern world of the future. And so for this reason, the United States has a very uncomfortable position at this very moment, because we have a somewhat friendly alliance with Pakistan, and we also have a somewhat friendly relationship with India. So the statement from the President of the United States today largely reflected that. He stated in short that he has a friendship with both the leaders of Pakistan and India, and he thinks they're going to be able to sort it out without shooting each other. So pretty much just trying to say, I'm going to ignore this one because there really is no side for America to pick, where it's quite clear and obvious who we should. And actually, as far as I'm concerned, with this channel being pro-American and pro-Western, it really is actually hard to say which side is the side for America to back. It's actually a fairly difficult situation because we actually reap from both of them about the same benefits. And we also have a relationship with both of them that is about on par with the other. So it's pretty hard to say that India provides more benefits to the United States than Pakistan, and Pakistan provides more of, say, a strategic relationship than India. It's really hard to say that because both of them are fairly important for American strategic interests in their own ways equally. So it's an incredibly difficult situation. But what do y'all think in the chat right now? Do y'all think that the Republic of India is what the United States should support, or do you think that we should support Pakistan? Or do y'all think that we should come in and intermediate as a neutral third party, looking out for the best interest of both, and try and see if we can de-escalate the conflict as a whole? I would make that a poll, but that would take too long to type out, and there's about a million other things to manage running the stream right now that unfortunately wouldn't really be able to allow me to spend the time to type those up. But let me know what y'all are thinking right now about that in the chat, because I'll be incredibly interested to know about that. But nevertheless, there are plenty of questions that I've seen so far coming in the chat about this topic tonight, and a whole bunch of other topics, and I want to make sure that we're able to get into that right here and right now. And so moving on into the big questions of the night, we actually have a $13.37 super chat from Jack Ray. Hey, and a massive shout out to Jack Ray for helping this channel to keep on running. And Jack Ray said, excellent work and keep it up. And I got to thank you massively for the support, Jack Ray, and saying that it's excellent work and to keep it up. I'm trying my best here, and I hope that it's showing through a little bit, because tonight was a little bit more chaotic than I would like it to be. This is not my first rodeo of running a solo stream. Back in the day when the channel first started, I ran solo streams a pretty good bit, and during sometime during law school, I think last year, Matthew actually pretty much took a break from the channel for about a month, and I ran the stream solo for about a month. But usually there is a good amount of time that I have before the stream with that in mind, where I am actually able to prepare to be able to run this thing solo. And there's a couple of things that I do in the background to be able to prepare for that. I write my own polls, I, get ready to moderate the chat, and also I really think out my dialogue a great deal, to figure out how to make it pretty much autopilot for me to belt out what I need to say and also moderate the chat at the same time. But tonight was a little bit different. I didn't have any real heads up notice. I literally got into the call with Matthew on Discord and then said, hey, welcome in, we're ready to go. And he was like, I can't do it, I'm too sick. And that was literally a minute before the show. So I didn't really have any time to prepare. So hopefully everything's still coming out well, and it's good analysis and it's good news coverage while I'm trying to do everything literally at the last second. So hopefully everything is turning out good on that part so far. But I got to thank you for the support, Jack Ray, and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we would not be able to be here every single night together running the show and making sure that the news comes out well, and making sure that we have a nice live chat full of amazing folks from the LSA who help this channel to keep on running day in and day out like you do. And so with that, a massive thanks to you so much once again, Jack Ray. I hope that does address that well, and we will make sure to keep it up. And also Charles Intel said, man, Matt has sick days. I mean, kind of, yeah, if he's sick, he just, he gets to take days off. It's just that usually there's a lot more time that I have to prepare for that sort of thing instead of just the last minute right before the show. But moving on from that and into the next question, we actually have a $10 super chat from Rye Guy Sir. Hey, who threw in the first super chat of the night. And Rye Guy Sir said, good evening, Enforcer Matt. Can't make it tonight. Take one from the chat, LSA, Long Live the Republic, and Slavo Grainy. And I'll be watching tomorrow morning. And dang it, I hate to hear that you couldn't make it tonight, Rye Guy. But I do thank you so much for the support and helping the channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible and help to make it a reality. We will make sure to take one from the chat, so if you have a live chat question right now, make sure to throw it in. And of course, Slavo Grainy, long live the Lee Spring Army, and long live the Republic, because it's an absolutely amazing country that we live in, and I'm always incredibly proud of it, hell nor high water, whether things are going good or bad. But beyond that, we are going to be trying to find a question. We're not going to be making one. We're going to be trying to find one. So hopefully we'll be able to see that a good question comes through here fairly soon. And let's see here. Trying to see if we can find any good questions here. Any good questions y'all have at all? I'm looking for any. I'm fiending for one. Because unlike any other night where there would be a spreadsheet of them that are compiled through the whole show, I don't have that tonight. So we're having to try and gather them straight out of the live chat. So if y'all have a good live chat question, let me know, and I'll be trying to answer it, because we have one that is going to be sponsored here right now, at this very moment. And also, let's see, Pixel Lord M asked, has there been any recent news from the Caucasus? They're oddly quiet. And no, there really hasn't been. Interestingly enough, it appears that all of the uprisings have been quelled for now, and a lot of those units, or a lot of those groups, may be going into hibernation. We have seen in the past that the Ingushetian Liberation Army, or the ILA, has been active in the area of Ingushetia. We've also seen that some anti-Chechen forces, or anti-Chechen puppet forces, have been operating around the area of southern Chechnya, and we've also been able to see some limited activity from ISIS-K inside the area of Dagestan onto the coast of the Caspian Sea. But nevertheless, we haven't really been able to hear or see of them a lot lately, which is leading us to believe the Russian security forces may have been able to finally grind them down enough that most of them have gone into hibernation until they're able to build up their numbers and build up their equipment and supplies once more to be able to conduct coordinated attacks like they were several months ago. That would be what I'm thinking, at least for now, because that seems to be the most logical kind of an answer that we have on the subject right here at the moment, because beyond that, not a lot of news has been coming out from the area of the Caucasus Mountain Range, and I don't really think that is without reason. I think that's because quite literally a lot of those units have just gone into hibernation. But beyond that, moving on into our last question of this segment, we actually have a $20 super chat from Old Warrior. And Old Warrior said, T-Fund, doesn't China back Pakistan, and India bought tons of weapons from Russia? And technically, kind of, sort of, yes, to a degree. It's a little bit interesting how it works in between Pakistan and India and who's really backing them and supporting them, because technically, Russia and China really don't support either side. It's more so that they just sell weapons to them because they're opportune customers. Pakistan usually buys a decent amount of weapons from China, and India buys a decent amount of its weapons from the Russian Federation. It doesn't really mean that India is big friends with Russia and Pakistan is big friends with China, because the same problems that Pakistan has with India, in the end, Pakistan also has with China. It's just that China doesn't actually control Jammu and Kashmir. It actually controls this little area over here of Ladakh, which is actually controlled by the People's Republic of China right now. So Pakistan still pretty much in the end has the exact same issues with China and India, but Pakistan still buys a decent amount of weapons from China. Nevertheless, China just doesn't really back Pakistan as an actual strategic defensive partner, and so far we have not seen an official statement yet from the Chinese Foreign Ministry about the situation between Pakistan and India at all, which is largely showing that this isn't a appearing on China's radar as a significant issue at the moment, or they may just be trying to game it out and see what's going to really be happening, and if it looks like it's going to go very bad very fast, then they might try and do something about it. If it doesn't really appear that it's going to go really bad really quickly, and it ends up being a pretty bad border skirmish, then they might just sit back and not really do anything about it at all, and let it be someone else's issue, possibly like America's. Because at the end of the day, this situation has been going on ever since Pakistan split from India at the late 1940s, really in the early 1950s, and they've never really resolved this situation since then, so no one really wants to get involved in it because it's pretty much the Middle East situation with Israel. It's never going to solve itself. It's just always going to be an endless issue with this. And also, that's another fun thing that I have to point out. Is that there is always endless border issues going on about who controls what somewhere in the world. People always try and make that out to be an issue that is only had in areas that are post-colonial holdings of European powers. But the reality is that border conflicts and border confrontations are always going on everywhere, and it doesn't even matter if it was a post-colonial country. The reality is that Pakistan, technically the British Raj and the Republic of India in its original form was a post-colonial holding, but the way that India and Pakistan exist today actually is not post-colonial. It is entirely by the actions and conflicts of a post-colonial country ripping itself apart to try and create the borders that they dreamed would be the right ones. And interesting enough, some people may not know this, but Bangladesh actually used to be a part of Pakistan until it declared independence from Pakistan. It's an entire issue. But really quickly, I actually saw DT ask a great question. This is a great question to add on to Old Warrior Super Chat here on top of the other question that we were just answering from Old Warrior. Why did they break apart? Speaking about India and Pakistan, that is a great question, DT, and the whole reason why they broke apart was because of ideological differences. This is something that it sounds religious, but the reality is that it's more so about political power and control inside of a country. And let me go show you all the actual borders. Let's see. India in 1948. Let me go see if I can find that for y'all. 1948 in India. Let me go see if I can find a map. Let's see. Oh, dang, come on. You gotta be kidding me. You gotta be kidding me right here. What the hell? Let's see. Map of India in 1947. Maybe this will be good. Maybe this will be good, heavens. Oh, dagnabbit. Let me go see. So, the Republic of India, here we go. So this is what India actually looked like when it was freed from British control. Just to let you all know, there's a lot of things that are really misunderstood about Indian independence. A lot of people say that the reason why India became an independent country was because of Mahatma Gandhi and his peaceful protests. And that was a bit of a reason why, but the reality of the reason that the British got rid of India is that they actually found out it was a lot more expensive to maintain the colonial holding than it was when they were reaping benefits from it. Basically, to put it lightly, it was becoming a lot more difficult to control and really to put down the rebellions from the Indian people, and it was too costly to do that. Then they were actually making money from the colony, so they decided to just get rid of it. And that decision was made way back pretty much at the beginning of the 20th century, say before 1910 even. This was already kind of in the works. Other things started to push this forward a lot more, like the Amritsar massacre that occurred later on, which was viewed poorly in both Britain and India. There was a whole bunch of issues that was going on there, but Mahatma Gandhi and his peaceful protest was one thing that continued to push that on even farther. Nevertheless, they did get their independence in 1947, and these were the borders that they originally saw. And you'll notice that there are two countries that did not exist, Pakistan and Bangladesh. And that was for a very interesting reason. The British had done a lot of surveying and polling, and they were able to get a decent outline of where the Hindus and Muslims lived, because they did know that religious differences were going to be a pretty big issue. And you can see right here that this is pretty much what they came up with. This is the area in green where most of the Muslims live inside of the British Raj, which is what is now modern-day India. This area in pink, this kind of pinkish red color, is mostly Hindu. This area over here in green is also Muslim as well. The areas in like this grayish color are actually animists, which are kind of like folklore, folk religion folks. And then over here in the yellow in Burma, those were actually the Buddhists. But nevertheless, all of these were British holdings at the time, and it was understood that it might be good to try and divide them up on different grounds. But nevertheless, it was decided in the end that they wouldn't do that themselves, and they would allow for the democratic process to prevail. And they would just allow India to split itself up however they wanted once that was over. So India got its independence in 1947 and looked just like this. And as soon as they got independence, there were massive riots and infighting that was happening everywhere because of this fear. The Muslims in India were greatly outnumbered by the Hindus. And it was believed that in this modern Indian republic in 1947, that the Hindus were just going to run the country and screw the Muslims over, because Muslims would never have a majority or even a balance against the Hindus. They were going to be outnumbered the whole time. So because of that, Pakistan and pretty much the Muslim areas of India declared independence and broke away from India. But at the same time, India actually was able to, in that process, hold control of the Kashmir region. If you look at this map up here, you can see that the Kashmir region is largely Islamic, but nevertheless, they were able to hold control over it. And this is where the problem still exists to this day. Pakistan claims that this is theirs because there's Muslim people living there. They say that the Muslim people can only really get proper democratic representation in a Islamic state like Pakistan, and for this reason they wanted to be returned. On the other hand, India says that that territory did not properly cede itself from the Republic of India, and for this reason it's still technically theirs. And these people, according to the Republic of India, and this is still true, are democratically represented within the Republic of India's the parliament. So for the large part, they do have democratic representation, but that's where the issue has lied. Later on, Bangladesh would declare independence from Pakistan, and it would become its own independent country as well, outside of Pakistan. So kind of like a Russian doll, if y'all know what I'm talking about, where there's like a smaller doll in each one, because out of the Republic of India came Pakistan, and then out of Pakistan came Bangladesh. But that's pretty much why the split occurred, is that it was largely for political power reasons. It wasn't really religion, but it was the idea that the Hindus would continuously push the Muslim ideologies down and really curtail their political power, and they wouldn't be able to have majority political power in an Indian republic that existed with those borders, and that's what created the conflict that led to the separation of Pakistan and India, and that's also what led to the continued tensions to this day. And also, Fagelon got that right. It is a Matryoshka doll. That was what I was looking for. But that is why the tensions have lasted all of this time inside of the Republic of India and Pakistan over the issue of Kashmir. And there's also been another more pressing issue than just the fact that there are Islamic people living in the Kashmir region. The real pressing reason is that India actually controls all of the sources for the fresh water that flows through Pakistan. Now, in any region in the world, control of your water source is a very important kind of a thing. And to have a control over another country's water is usually considered a violation of national security or national sovereignty. Because if another country like India is able to cut off your water supply, that means that they have control over whether hundreds of millions of people might die of thirst or not, or may just die because, there's no crops growing because there's no water to continue to water them with. So that's also been another major issue on Pakistan's mind. But they were able to resolve that in 1960 by creating a water treaty, which had existed all the way up until yesterday, which guaranteed that the Republic of India would never interfere with the flow of water in the tributaries heading into the area of the Indus River, meaning that Pakistan's water security was secured. But it really is for those two reasons that there's been a major confrontation that's endlessly been going on between India and Pakistan, is that the Pakistanis and the Indians contest who really controls Kashmir, and also the Pakistanis want it because it controls pretty much all of the flow of water into their country. Those are really the big issues. But nevertheless, I hope I was able to address that the best I can, or at least give a bit of like a brief historical breakdown of the situation in the region and why all of this happened. And also, I see that a lot of people, let's see, someone says it's not about religion, then goes on to explain it was all about religion. Well, religion is kind of just the underlying thing, because this really had nothing to do with religion. This had to do with political power, because you could have broke this down any way you wanted to. I mean, hell, you could break it down that all of them were the same religion, but then there was this group over here that, they created wicker baskets in a special way, and then these guys created wicker baskets in another way, and so politically, the group that created wicker baskets the other way outnumbered the other guys, and we're going to tell them how to make their wicker baskets, and then that's where the problem lied. It's pretty much the same issue. Like, it's not really a religious issue, it's more about political power, and the fact that Pakistan was never going to have any kind of majority political power in that form of a Republic of India. That's why they broke away. So while it sounds like it's about religion, it really isn't. It's more so about consolidation of political power within a specific group. So that's kind of the real issue there. So, yes, kind of about religion, really not at its source. It's more so about political power. But beyond that, moving on out of that little bit of news inside the Indian subcontinent, it is time for us to move on out of this question segment for a little bit. We will be getting to the rest of the super chats and as many live chats as we can before the end of the night. And I do have to give a massive thanks and appreciation to everyone who has been supporting the channel tonight, because all of y'all continue to make this channel possible day in and day out. Even when I'm on my own, running this thing completely solo, y'all continue to help this channel to be a possibility each and every day. And we are massively appreciative of that, and we thank y'all greatly for continuing to help this channel to keep on running, because no one has to, and yet y'all do. But moving on from that and out of the Indian subcontinent, it is time for us to move on into the Middle East, as we have been able to hear of some more major developments inside of this area over the past 24 hours, as we've been able to hear in the area of Haifa that the Houthis were able to fire a missile at Israel today. They were able to shoot down the missile and intercept it before it hit the state of Israel, but it is once again showing that the Yemeni Houthis have not been quelled by the U.S. airstrikes onto their region. They are continuing to act in a hostile manner against other countries inside the Middle East. We have also been able to hear, in other words, of the situation with Iran and a new U.S. proposal that has been made to Iran today, which appears to have been outright rejected, which is the Emirati model. And according to the United States, they are saying that this is now the new deal for the Islamic Republic of Iran. They will now allow Iran to have civilian nuclear reactors, but they will have to import all of their uranium, and there will be no uranium enrichment for the Iranians at home, meaning that they will not be able to make their own enriched uranium in-house. They will have to import all of their uranium because there's a whole bunch of issues with that. I'll explain in a second. But there also will be full international oversight to the Iranian civilian nuclear program. So, the reason why these terms are being laid out is because of this. One, we're not against them having a civilian nuclear reactor, at least on the governmental level. I'm against them having any kind of nuclear technology at all, even if it's peaceful. But they're saying that it's not a bad thing if it's just a civilian nuclear reactor. The reason why we want them to import the uranium and also have no enrichment abilities inside of the country is because we don't really trust them. And the fear is that if they have the ability to enrich their own uranium in their own centrifuges, they would easily be able to create weapons-grade uranium really at any moment and then field and test a nuclear weapon. So that's really the reason why we put in those terms. The UAE accepted this model years ago and said that they would be willing to be a part of it, but Iran has refused because enrichment is really their primary goal. If they're not able to enrich their own uranium, that means they're not able to control their ability to nuclearize weapon-wise. And so it appears that this plan has also fallen through as well, and it appears that as each plan and each different concept continues to be presented to the Iranians and they continue to shoot down all of them, it's becoming quite clear that the Islamic Republic of Iran has no intention whatsoever of ever denuclearizing. And I think that it would be wise for the United States to realize that and begin to act on that appropriately and begin airstrikes and also military action against the Islamic Republic of Iran to destroy their abilities to produce a nuclear weapon and also ensure that the Islamic Republic of Iran will never have the ability to do it again. That is really the major crux of the issue right now inside the Middle East, and I think that at this point the Iranians are only buying themselves time as they continue to play these kinds of silly negotiating games with no good faith of actually following through with any kind of a proposition. However, moving on from that, it is time for us to finally move on into a little bit of a U.S. overview of the situation, because we were able to hear that there was a stance that was issued today by the President of the United States on Iran. And one second, folks. Sorry about that. I don't want to cough too much, but I'm monologuing a lot tonight. But during his recent interview with Time magazine, the president was asked if he worried the Israeli prime minister might drag the United States into a war with Iran, to which he responded, no. By the way, he may go into a war, but we're not getting dragged in, prompting the interviewer to ask if the U.S. would stay out of a war if Israel started it. Then the president stated, no, I didn't say that. You asked if he'd drag me in. I would like I'd go in unwillingly. No, I may go in very willingly if we can't get a deal. If we don't make a deal, I'll be leading the pack. So pretty much in like roundabout circular speak that was being done right here, the president of the United States is saying, no, I will not be getting dragged into a war by Israel, because if they're attacking Iran, that means that the plan didn't go through, and I will be attacking them anyways. That's pretty much what he meant to say, but it was said in a very roundabout kind of a way that was really confusing. So it appears that the United States is saying if a plan or a deal cannot be reached with the Iranians, we will be bombing the Iranians, which makes a good amount of sense. But honestly, I would say that it's quite clear at this point we can't make a deal with them, so we should start bombing them a little early. That would be my take on it, but that was what it was. We also were able to hear in the trade war news with China that Trump says he won't be dropping tariffs on China until they give us something. So I don't know what kind of concessions he's looking for from the Chinese, because we've heard that apparently the Chinese and the United States aren't even really talking right now about the trade war on any kind of a diplomatic level. So I really don't know what we're looking for in concessions. I don't know what would appease the United States on a governmental level right now, but this is starting to cause a good bit of havoc in some parts of the economy, and I've heard that some people are starting to be concerned that their businesses might go under because some of them rely on Chinese goods a little bit more than some people would like to believe. So a little bit of a concerning thing, but hopefully we'll be able to see that this issue can be resolved without causing too much damage to the U.S. citizenry. Meanwhile, moving on from that, and out of that news inside the United States, it is time for us to move on into the state of Ukraine, as we have been able to hear significant developments and news that has been going on the front lines themselves. We were able to see up in the area of Kursk that the Ukrainian sappers were still at work in the 225th Battalion, which hopefully the video loads. I don't know why some of these clips are loading really slowly tonight. I have absolutely no clue, but hopefully it will be loading here very soon. And it appears that it is not loading. A little bit interesting with that. Have no idea why. It is an absolute mystery to me, because the Wi-Fi is connected and it looks like it's absolutely busting, unequivocally fire. And for some reason, the thing just ain't running. It's a little bit weird with that, I'd have to say. A bit of a mystery. But nevertheless, we will have to move on from that clip and on into our next one in the location unknowns, as we were able to see that some Russians on some scooters were getting hit. And I think that Reddit might actually be down. Is Twitter down? Like, let me go check that. Because if Reddit is down, that might be cutting our entire news segment short tonight. So let me go check on the side if Twitter's down. And no, Twitter is now running just fine, actually. As you can see right here, Twitter is running fine. And now here we go. It actually loaded up right there. So here we go. We can actually see some Russians on assault scooters right here in this clip. And we see them getting hit. This was happening up in the Kursk area today. And I got to tell you, the whole scooter assault concept, I don't really think it's working out too well. And we can see them hitting one of the scooter assault guys, and that was the end of the clip. But once again, the scooting into battle just doesn't really work out the way people think it should. Moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see a Russian drone being destroyed, a Merlin drone right here. And, hit it dead on the nail. Look at that. Oh, you see them hitting another one right here as well. And right on top of it, knocking both of the Merlins out. Very good to see. And I got to say, it's a wonderful thing to know that the Ukrainians continue to knock out those reconnaissance drones, because while those reconnaissance drones are numerous and cheap, they still pose a massive threat to Ukrainian armed forces on the ground with their reconnaissance abilities. We also were able to see a Ukrainian resupply drone being tested today as well, which was a pretty interesting sight to see. And we see them here loading up an ammo crate onto the top of the resupply drone and tightening up those ratchet straps, getting it ready for its little journey here. We see them now crawling through the fields. And crawling on up hills. This thing is actually quite versatile and travels around a good bit. It appears they can go about 14 kilometers an hour, so that's nearly a running pace at top speed. They can also climb incredibly steep angles and all kinds of different obstacles as well, making resupplies a lot easier, at least near to the front lines, because they're not having to put larger vehicles and also infantry at direct risk of getting hit and killed. Instead, they're putting the robot or the drone at risk for the large part, which means that the resulting loss and casualty due to a direct hit on this vehicle would be less significant. You see it then getting back up into the M113. Really very impressive, actually. I think that's actually an incredibly cool system, and they're probably going to start implementing that on a larger form throughout most of the front lines. We also got to see this clip today of a Russian being medically evacuated from the front lines. They were bringing a wounded guy out of the front, and you can see that right here in this clip. And I think the guy might be even more wounded after that one. The guy ended up taking some flight miles. They hit a bump, and the guy just literally went flying. I've never seen anything like that before. The guy did end up getting hurt a good bit. We could tell at the end of the video. That's why I'm not going to be showing the rest of it. But I've never seen anything like that. When the Russian wounded fly, and they are flying, I've never, like, quite truly, I've never seen a clip like this in the entire war. The guy literally just flew right out of the back of that truck and just into oblivion. I've never seen anything like it before. We will watch it one more time because it's just honestly kind of mesmerizing to watch this guy just like lift off the bottom of the truck and just go flying away. So here's the clip again. And there he goes. He's gone. He's not coming back. And they're going to tell him that that injury was not service-related because he shouldn't have been riding in the back of a flatbed truck. Maybe. But moving on from that and out of that clip, we also have the Russian casualty report for the past 24 hours. And holy smokes, Matthew would have been disappointed if he was here tonight because sadly, there was absolutely no losses of Bobcat skid steers tonight. Really sad thing. We absolutely hate to see that because if it wasn't for a single Bobcat, I think Matthew would have been here tonight. If one Bobcat had been lost, Matthew probably would have made a magic return to streaming. But nevertheless, here is the casualty report and also a little bit of a summary from Miss Disa, the keeper of the records. Nice MLRS and AA losses, with 72 artillery pieces, tied with 2 other days as the 13th highest loss of the war, and 151 supply trucks is the 18th highest loss of the war. And we were able to see the losses were actually pretty decent in most categories today. Not really record-breaking by all extents, but still a fairly decent amount of losses for the Russian army, as 1,170 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 3 APCs, 151 supply trucks, 9 main battle tanks, 72 artillery pieces, 119 drones, 3 MLRSs, 48 cruise missiles, and 3 anti-aircraft warfare systems. All in all, it was actually a pretty decent day, and we like to see that the Russian Federation is continuing to take some pretty decent losses as the war is continuing on, and the Ukrainians are continuing to hold their ground. And not only that, that's certainly showing in the casualty report. Moving on from that and into the northern front, near to the area of Kupiansk, we did get to see some small ammo detonations happening in the area after the Ukrainians hit a frontline ammunition dump. Of course, they are somewhat small, and I would have to say that this appears to not really be that big of a deal. I don't even know why we showed it. Man, that sounds like popcorn cooking in the stove, and you know what they say, Orville Redenbacher never cooked them better. But moving on from that and further down the lines, we also got to see the Russians also getting hit in Kupiansk by the 114th Territorial Defense Force Brigade, which we can see in this clip right here. 1 month of hard work from the Strix Squad of the 114th. And we can see them here chasing down Russians as they frolic in the fields, kind of like Russell Crowe in Gladiator. Oh, and they were hitting him. Goodness, look at that. Another dead-on hit right in the bunker. The bunker is gone. And they are handing in the losses. I mean, goodness gracious, look at that. And we see them just continuing to take out Russian forces throughout the entirety of the area. Oh, another dead-on hit right there. And another one. And we see them here targeting another Russian soldier, and he's now making a run for it, but the run, that didn't work either. We also see another drone going for him, hitting him. Oh, and another one. Oh, take a look at that. Goodness. Honestly, the hits are pretty significant. And it appears that they were putting a freeze frame on this guy right here, but nevertheless, still very significant hits happening in the northern area near to Kupiansk. Moving further on down the lines and towards Kremenna, we also get to see them hitting Russian forces down here as well with the 53rd Mechanized Brigade. And take a gander at this right here. We see the drone coming on in and hitting dead on the head, knocking out a Buhanka, and a second one as well. And another vehicle that may have been an MTLB. We now see them targeting another vehicle inside of some sort of a dugout. And another vehicle that was abandoned on the street. And they are just bringing in the losses right here. I mean, look at this. It's absolutely crazy. They're about to go hit a grad down there. And they're about to hit this KAMAZ. Oh, and the Russians went running. Oh, and they got it. Very nice. Very nice to see. We love to see it, and it's great to see they were continuing to hit those Russian forces. Moving on from that and down towards the area of Bakhmut, we also got to see that the Ukrainians were also able to hit an ammo dump down here in the area of the city of Bakhmut, just miles away from the active battlefield in Chasiv Yar. The Ukrainians have continuously been trying to knock out ammunition dumps and supplies wherever they can throughout the entirety of the front lines, because striking at the Russians' logistical capabilities is more effective than actually knocking out the Russian fighting forces themselves, because the Russian fighting forces don't have guns or ammo to fight with, then they're going to be a lot less effective. And for this reason, the Ukrainians have been targeting frontline dumps, ammunition dumps, wherever they can. Frontline dumps is a little bit misleading because everywhere the Russians are fighting in is a dump. So I had to make sure to clarify it was an ammo dump and not just any kind of a normal dump. And we see them continuing to show the burning blaze of the ammunition dump. Once again, a fairly significant hit, and it does appear that the Russians have lost several tons, possibly dozens of tons, of munitions that were stored inside the building. Nevertheless, that's the end of the clip, but it is nice to see they are continuing to strike ammunition dumps all the way up and down the front. Meanwhile, inside the city of Toretsk, we did get to see that the Russians attempted to counterattack today in a limited form in the middle of the city, but it appears to have been completely thwarted. You see right here, the Ukrainians were targeting and striking the Russian forces directly inside the city as they were attempting their forward push, and they were immediately getting pushed right back by the explosion of the HE shells right in front of them. We see them just continuing to hammer the Russians. I mean, the Russians are down there and they're on their tiny post, and they're getting pounded. But moving on from that and out of that clip and on into our next one down near Novobat-Makivka, we also got to see the Russians attempting a frontline recovery on a T-62. The tank they're riding on is a T-62. They were using these things in the 60s, mind you, so fairly ancient. We now see them hopping off of the T-62. Okay, Ivan. We have to recover this tank up here. It was abandoned earlier in, I believe. Let's go take a gander at it. Oh, look at that. Another destroyed T-62. Okay, bring on up the... Oh! The recovery tank got blown up by an anti-tank mine. So not only did they lose the original main battle tank, they also lost the recovery tank they just rode in on. So a little sad. Like, they brought in a crappy T-62 to try and recover another abandoned T-62, and they ended up losing both of them. He asks if everyone is okay, and he gets no answer. This guy might be on his own at this point, but the recovery tank is gone. I think that they may have been shattered to bits, they say, and I don't think that one will be coming back from the grave anytime soon. But moving on from that and into our next clips near to the city of Pokrovsk, we were able to see the Ukrainian armed forces clearing out the skies today throughout most of the front, which we can see right here near to Pokrovsk. We can see them getting the drones ready, setting them up, getting them ready to fly. And there they go, they're flying off. Oh, and they've been slamming them. Look at it. And that was the end of the clip, but a very impressive one nevertheless. Moving on from that and on into our next clip, we also got to see them hitting more Russian forces in the Pokrovsk direction with the 68th Jaeger Brigade. And they're bringing in that Jaegermeister. Take a gander at this. Oh! Can't do that too much. We're going to start hacking. Well, you see them targeting a Russian truck that's going off-road. They're trying to test out that suspension, and I have a feeling that the suspension isn't going to hold up on that one, Chief. We now see another drone coming in and targeting the Russians down there, hitting them hard. We see them going for another one. Take a look at this. Another one, folks. Hey, oh, they got it. Look at that. Boom, shakalaka. And I mean, goodness gracious, folks, they are hitting them hard. Blasting them to pieces, they say. What the? And in this last part of the clip, they hit the Kamas. Very nice. Love to see it. Moving on from that and on to the next clip, we also get to see the Russians getting slammed by the Nemesis Regiment of the 412th. Take a look at this. They found an MTLB carrying an artillery piece with shells. It looks like a delicious target. And they're about to hit their D-30. Why did they call it the D-30? Because after the Ukrainians hit it, the Russians had to say, damn, about 30 times. That's why it's called the D-30. Look at it. He hit it. He hit it and blew it to pieces. Oh, you see them continuing to slam them down there. Take a look at this. We see them continuing to search around for the Russians. They're looking in the fields. Sometimes they grow like corn. And sometimes, when you find all of the Russians in a field in a big group, they call it the corn blitz. Because there's a lot of Russians in the field growing like corn, and it's in a big group, so it's like a hub blitz. But moving out from Pokrovsk, where we were able to see that the Ukrainians are holding the Russians back greatly, blitz. Every last yard soaked in the Russian peace. They're very scared, blitz. We move on down, further on to Kharkiv, where we get to see them hitting Russian forces even harder, blitz. Take a look at this. We have Evan down there, and he's firing the AK. He's attempting to hit the drone, but he never hit drone, no matter how slow it go. It hit him instead. In the Russian Federation, you do not hit drone. Drone hit you. It is a classic parable of a legendary acclaim. But moving on from that and down to Velika Novosilka, we were able to see that the 110th Mechanized Brigade, Mechanizna Brigada of the Ukrainian Armed Forces were able to hit and destroy Russian armed forces near to area of city in great patriotic action. Take a look. Hit recovery vehicle, go to therapy. It'll never recover from trauma it got on front line of having its back blown out by a FPV drone. We can see another recovery vehicle getting hit, and another main battle tank. Take a look at this. The losses they claim here and here, and the Russians, they are never any greater for it. They said, we take the high road, and that meant that the losses were going to go incredibly high, higher than they've ever been. When the Russians go, when they go low, we go higher. That means when they take low losses, we take incredibly higher losses, play it. Just because it is what it is. We can see them here flying over burning tank. This is much like the burning bush that has been paralleled before in prior texts of older times. And we can see here that in Russia, however, it is burning tank. And the message that comes from it, it is screamed like inside, like it's almost inside of a metal can. Ah, I'm boiling in here! And then it's like, wow, it's very boiling hot. It's like a Finnish sauna or something. But sadly, sauna you do not want to be in. The coals are not in a little bucket. The coals are on top of you, and they're cooking you like a Dutch oven. You know, we can see here that they continue to hit them quite significantly. Some of them go, babushka, why in the hell do I have to come here? I'm not even getting paid. And to that I have to say shame, but nevertheless we are still here. Moving on from that, and on out of that clip, and also Little Offensive said, almost going Scottish, eh? No, okay, that's not going Scottish. Going Scottish is talking like this. That is not Scottish. That is Russian. That is entirely Russian. You have to know your accents. Yeah, Captain, I'm doing all I can. I'm giving her all she's got. But moving on from that, now the area of Velika Novosilka, we were able to see further down, near to the area of Robotny, that the Russians were getting absolutely slammed, slackered, and lacquered, maybe. I don't know about getting lacquered. You know, that's a bit of a stretch right there. But we can see a Russian sitting at the bottom of a tree. Look at him. He thought he was in a movie or something. Like he was going to sit at the bottom of the tree and be like, oh, I wonder if Marussia will wait for me. Oh, let me get the flower. Pluck, she loves me. Pluck, she doesn't. Pluck, she loves me. Oh, shit, it's done. And, you know, he's very scared. He's very scared. He starts to run. But it's just too late. He will never know if Marussia really liked him or not. Bing! And there he go. He's gone now. Well, that is the end of clip. But that Russian, he never know if Marussia like him or not. For he was lacquered on Frontline and left to rot. Moving on from that and down to Odessa, we were able to see a picture. I believe it was a picture. Hopefully I'm right. It was pictures of the training of Marines in the 37th Brigade. And take a look at this. They were on boat and more boat. And other boat in fog, and other boat wearing life vests and looking strong with 50 cal in front of the boat. Look at that. Very beautiful to see. Very great thing to know. Look at that. Take a gander. Moving on from that and down into middle of the Black Sea, we also were able to hear that the Ukrainian border guard seized a Russian ship today and brought it to the port of Odessa because they claimed that it was exporting stolen grains from occupied Ukraine. And somehow they were able to successfully pull this off. I was actually pretty shocked with that. Because to be able to catch one of these ships, you have to be out there pretty much in the middle of the Black Sea to be able to get it. So I don't really know where they seized it, but they still were able to pull off a significant success today as a result of that, and I was very impressed with that. So really cool to see. And good to know the Ukrainians are able to flex their naval muscles. And also, where the hell's the Black Sea? What the Black Sea Fleet doing? They're not even out there. They're not even out there at all, apparently. They're hidden in Novorossiysk somewhere, praying to God that another dolphin or, let's see, what are those drones called? I'm forgetting the name of the drones, the naval drones. The Sea Babies. They're praying that another Sea Baby doesn't blow up on the side of a destroyer somewhere. But moving on from that and on up into Kyiv, it is time for us now to get on into the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. And we actually do have a speech. And so, without further ado, here is the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy on day 1157 of the war. And so, without further ado, here is the speech. Speech!
Дорогі українці і українки, щойно провів засідання Ставки. Була сьогодні також окрема доповідь міністра оборони України. Найголовніше питання на сьогодні – ППО. Постачання в Україну систем ППО. Постачання ракет для ППО. Наші домовленості з нашими партнерами. Контракти. Наша готовність виробляти ППО в Україні та перемовини щодо ліцензій. Були доповіді військових та урядовців. Є завдання для Міністерства закордонних справ. Ми будемо намагатись досягти відповідної згоди також від Сполучених Штатів Америки. Згоди щодо патріотів для України. Ми готові купити необхідну кількість систем Петріот для нашої держави. Не йдеться про благодійність. Ми запропонували конкретні варіанти угоди, щоб захистити наших людей. Я доручив дипломатам працювати активніше щодо відповіді по патріотах. Сьогодні ми разом з дипломатичними представниками держав і міжнародних організацій, які працюють в Україні, були на місці удару балістики по Києву. Саме там, де вибух ракети забрав життя 12 наших людей. Мої щирі співчуття. Зруйновані звичайні будинки. Рятувальна операція тільки нещодавно закінчилась. Були на місці більш ніж 50 представників посольств та 11 представників міжнародних організацій. Ми разом вшанували пам'ять загиблих. Всі дипломати на власні очі побачили, кого атакує Росія своєю балістикою. Балістикою, яку вони отримують в Північній Кореї. Я дякую всім державам, які разом з Україною в таких обставинах, в такі моменти – Європа, Латинська Америка, Африка, Азія, Австралія, регіон Тихого океану, Північна Америка. Всім партнерам хочу подякувати за підтримку зараз. І також всім міжнародним організаціям, які допомагають нам, які допомагають нашій державі, які підтримують українців. І окремо я хочу подякувати також всім журналістам, українським та іноземним, кожному блогеру, подкастеру, всім, хто поширює у світі правду про те, що відбувається у нас в Україні. І про те, як ми потребуємо миру. Найближчими днями можуть відбутись дуже вагомі зустрічі, які повинні наблизити тишу для України. Потрібне безумовне припинення вогню. Потрібен реальний тиск на Росію, щоб вони сприйняли або американську пропозицію припинити вогонь і рухатись до миру, або нашу пропозицію, будь-яку, яка справді може спрацювати і гарантувати надійне, негайне та безумовне припинення вогню. А потім достойний мир та гарантії безпеки. Дипломатія повинна спрацювати. І ми робимо все для того, щоб дипломатія стала справді змістовною і нарешті спрацювала. Нарешті. Слава Україні!
And Ram Slava. And that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on day 1157 of the news of the war, of news of wars from around the world, actually. But that is going to be moving us on into the second question segment, where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. And boy, howdy, what a question segment it is, because we can talk about literally anything and everything y'all want to talk about. And of course, I do have to remind people that things are working a little bit differently tonight than normal. Because of the lack of a co-host, unfortunately, I'm not able to do some of the things that we do normally. For example, if you've thrown in a live chat question throughout the entirety of the first hour and a half of the stream, I unfortunately will not be able to reference those because I do not have those in front of me. I don't have a spreadsheet. I'm not able to compile them in the spreadsheet because I'm trying to monologue and cover the news, which is kind of its own thing. So for that reason, I'll be reading off all of the super chats first and addressing those. And then once we get through those, we actually will be moving into live chat questions. And then I encourage y'all to open up the floodgates and just start throwing in as many questions as y'all can, and I will be trying to answer all of them. And it could be anything. It could be literally any question that y'all have about anything going on in the world, and I will try and answer it the best I can with the knowledge that I have on each topic. But I nevertheless thank you all so much so far for enjoying the stream tonight, and if y'all have, please make sure to subscribe, because we always really do enjoy having a lot of folks around here. We have hundreds of thousands of people who enjoy the Enforcer channel and call the Lee Spring Army their community. And we would love to know that people continue to join it and get used to calling the Lee Spring Army their home. But a massive thanks to all of y'all so far for watching, and also a massive thanks to all the people who have supported the channel tonight. Folks who support the channel never have to, but y'all are the ones who make this channel entirely possible and help it to keep on running. We always say that, and it always seems to be something that's stated in kind of just a background statement, but it is quite the reality of the situation that the only way we keep the lights on, and the only way we keep this channel running practically 6 days, well, 7 days a week, really, for the most part, is thanks to y'all. If y'all were not supporting this channel, the folks who went out of their way to do that, and y'all don't even have to, we wouldn't be able to keep our lights on here. We wouldn't be able to spend 70 and 80 hours a week every week compiling news and getting all of this put together. And if it wasn't for y'all, it just wouldn't be a reality. And that's why I got to give a massive thanks to y'all, because y'all are the ones who really do make this channel possible. And I know that a lot of people really appreciate our coverage and always say that we're doing a great job, and really the whole channel, it's because of us. But the reality is that it really is because of our supporters. Because if it wasn't for our supporters, we would never have been able to be on YouTube for a day, because we wouldn't be able to do this as our actual job. And so that's why we always give a massive amount of time and a massive amount of thanks to everyone who supports the channel, whether it's $1 or if it's hundreds of dollars, because every single person who does that is going out of their way to do something they don't have to, which is really amazing in itself. And secondly, it's the way that we actually are able to do this as our full-time job and do this as our living, so that way people can come on here and say that we're doing a pretty good job at it in the first place. But still, with that, it is time for us to move on into this question segment, and we have tons and tons and tons of questions. Very good questions, as a matter of fact. Super chats and live chats. And also, I would have to say really quickly, let's see. I saw someone say an interesting question here. Let's see here. It was, where in the world did it go? Let's see, Dan Metcalf said, wouldn't be able to go to Seattle. Yeah, that's another thing. We wouldn't have been able to ever try and go to Seattle or anywhere and try and figure out where Enforcer HQ 3.0 is. But most importantly, we wouldn't even have a place to live in right now if it wasn't for y'all. So that's why we thank y'all greatly, because, you know, we with y'all's support helps us be able to live our lives, so that way we can actually do this and make a living doing it, so that way we can keep covering the news for y'all. It's a job like any other, really. But with that, it is time for us to move on into the questions. And our first question of the question segment for tonight is from, and let me make sure that I get it in order, it is from Surprise It's Us. Hey, threw in a 20 and said, thanks, Enforcer and LSA for the lurkers. And a huge shout out to you, Surprise It's Us. I thank you for throwing in the super chat. You are an old guard and a channel legend for sure. And I got to thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we would not be able to make this thing possible. And a massive shout out for appreciating the show tonight. I probably sounded a little bit wired and a little bit nervous, and I will admit I was. Because I usually am able to run a solo show pretty seamlessly without much of a hiccup or an issue, but that usually is because I have hours to mentally prepare for it. When I only have like 1 minute to mentally prepare for it before the show goes live, that was very stressful because I've never had to deal with that before. Things like that happen usually hours before a show. So, you know, I guess you could say that was probably the most generous thing ever done, because, you know, calling off work 1 minute before work, that is something that doesn't really usually happen. So with that, I hope that does address that well. A huge thanks to you once again for support, Surprises Us, and helping this channel to keep on running. And once again, if it wasn't for folks like you, we would never be able to make this thing a reality, and we wouldn't have been able to make it a reality tonight, of all nights. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. And with that one, we are on to the next one, which is another $20 super chat from Old Warrior, making his total support tonight $40. Hey! And a huge thanks to you for the support, Old Warrior. And Old Warrior asks, do we have any more info on the size of that big blast? And I think you're talking about the blast from the 51st Gral Arsenal outside of Moscow, which would be right here. And if all 105,000 tons had gone off at once, it would have been 7 times the Hiroshima blast. From what we know, a decent amount of the ammunition went off, but it wasn't all 105 tons of the munitions. From what we are understanding, it was, well, 105,000 tons. From what we understand, it was somewhere around 2/5 of the amount of munitions that were actually in the facility that exploded, meaning that it was more so around 30 or 40,000 tons. Still a very large explosion. I think it's the largest non-nuclear explosion ever seen in history at this point. I think it's even beating out the Halifax explosion at this point in terms of volume. But from what I know, it wasn't all 105,000 tons, because when we looked at the satellite footage that came out later, most of the hardened shelters in the western and eastern sides of the compound did survive the explosion, but pretty much the entire center of the compound did not survive, including the hardened shelters. So from what we know, it certainly wasn't all 105,000 pounds of explosives or tons. It was more so about 40,000 tons of explosives that blew up in the center of the compound. But with that, I hope that does address that question well, Old Warrior. Really good follow-up question that we never got to answering here live on stream. But nevertheless, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And also, Chris, I think you're getting Matthew confused with me. Matthew has never really been sick on stream before, or sick to the point he's had to miss a stream. I'm the one that's usually really sick, so you're probably saying that you would have fired me years ago. And honestly, the only reason I haven't been fired is because I'm the one who owns the show and runs it. So that's why I haven't been fired. But yeah, I've been actually surprisingly sick a lot over the years. I don't know what is up with that, because I don't like have any immunodeficiencies or anything like that. I just am very prone to getting sick, which really sucks. I absolutely hate getting sick, and I get sick a good amount, so absolutely hate that. But Matthew very rarely ever misses streams for any reason, so it was a little bit of a shock that he had to miss one tonight, but it was also a really big shock that he had to cancel out literally 1 minute before we went live. But beyond that, I do thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, Old Warrior. And so moving on from that and into our next question, we have a $10 super chat from Nightmare Before Christmas. Hey, thank you for the massive support all the way from the United Kingdom. He threw in a £10 super chat. And Nightmare Before Christmas said, this will be the third war I watched start live here. Hope it's the last in a good way. Please take a question from the chat, and long live the Lee Spring Army. And it actually is a little bit crazy to think that we've actually watched a lot of wars start and end here on this channel, in some cases. But an absolutely crazy thing. I just really don't know how to even think about that anymore, because it's just insane. We've watched the war in Ukraine start on the channel. Like, we actually watched it start on the day 1 of our world news coverage. Then we watched the war in between Israel and Iran start. Now we're watching the war in between India and Pakistan start. We watched the tensions rise and fall in between North and South Korea. Well, wax and wane for the large part between the two. That's been going on the whole time. The tensions gradually rising between Taiwan and China. We heard of the death of Queen Elizabeth. We heard about the death of the Pope. We've actually gone through a lot of news here in this channel. I mean, hell, we've actually now been around for 2 presidents of the United States, which is really crazy. Like, it's actually a pretty shocking thing, the amount of developments and news that has happened while we've been covering news on this channel for about over 3 years at this point, actually. Just an insane thing. But I gotta thank you so much for being here so far, supporting the channel, and being around to hear all of that news from here. Also, on top of that, we watched the Sudanese Civil War start. We also were here to see the mobilization of Europe. Let's see here. What else? What else has happened? The riots in Turkey. Oh, gee, let me think. The uprisings inside of Russia, the Wagner coup, all of the major battles that happened in Ukraine. Let's see. We've been around to kind of be around for the Burmese Civil War, or the Myanmar Civil War, whichever way you want to call it. But we haven't really talked about that at all on the channel, so I guess it doesn't really count. Let's see, what else have we talked about? Oh yeah, we've talked about the rising tensions in the South China Sea, and also in the East China Sea. And let's see, what else? Trying to think of anything else. Oh yeah, we talked about the border situation a little bit. We've talked about tariffs. We talked about the Chinese balloon flying over the United States. I mean, honestly, when you think about all of the news that we've covered over the years, it's actually been thousands of different stories. And it's just oh yeah, the end of the Syrian Civil War. Yeah, dumb wabbit, you're right. Yeah, the end of the Syrian Civil War was a big one. And then the beginning of the second Syrian Civil War, almost a couple of months after that. We also got to see, let's see here, the Israeli war in Lebanon once again when they moved in. We got to see, what else? I'm trying to think of all the other things. The guerrilla wars in Africa, really, I saw Jason Curley bringing up. I don't really think they count. We really don't cover most of them. Oh, yeah, the LA fires. Richard Minieren brought that up. Yeah, the LA fires was a big one. And let's see, the Jersey drones. We did cover the Jersey drones, too. We covered the unfortunate plane crash at Washington and also the air ambulance crash in Philadelphia. Yeah, Old Warrior got it right. The fall of Assad up in Syria. We covered that too. We even got to be around long enough to see Hot Dog Man quit, which is actually crazy. And also, someone said, didn't you cover a bit of stuff in Haiti? I don't think we ever did. We joked about Haiti and like barbecue and everything, but we never really covered Haiti in full. But we have covered a little bit of everything in every way over the past 3 years. And it really is crazy to think that folks like you have been around to see all of that happen, actually, here on the show, Nightmare Before Christmas. And so I got to thank you massively for that. I got to thank you for being around that long to hear all of that news come out of the channel. And hopefully this will be the last major war that we hear of for a while. But the reality is that it won't be. Actually, we will probably see that it'll just keep going on and on. There will always be war. That's something that pretty much is guaranteed at this point, is that there will always be a war somewhere in the world. But beyond that, I do thank you massively once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, Nightmare Before Christmas, we wouldn't be able to make this thing a reality, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. And with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one, which is from Purple Gerbil, another channel legend. Hey! And he put in a 10 and said, for the allergy medicine, and LSA forever. And a huge shout out to you once again, Purple Gerbil. And, of course, LSA forever. And thank you so much for the allergy medicine fund. I actually got myself some allergy medicine, some decongestants for, like, my ears. They actually largely got all of my allergies, like, gone. And also, it made my right ear pop completely. Now I'm kind of just waiting on my left ear to pop a little bit, which hopefully will happen soon. But beyond that, it's like generally I'm actually back to normal today. I feel perfectly fine for the large part. So I do thank you massively for support, and thank you for helping this channel to keep on running Purple Triple and supporting the Allergy Medicine Fund. And so with that, massive thanks to you once again. And we are on to the next one, which is a 10 Canadian from Bud. Hey, a big shout out to Canada up there, up in the great land of Canada. And Bud said, hope you're feeling better. I have a bad cat allergy, so I know all about allergies being stuffed up. Best allergy pills are Reacting Complete. Sinus and allergy pills need to have the plus sinus on them. I got to thank you for support, Bud, and I got to thank you for sharing that info with me. And I did get some, like, decongestant allergy sinus medicine kind of a thing the other day, and it actually worked quite well, actually. I was surprised. So I got to thank you for the recommendation, and I think, hopefully, we've got that under wraps. But if we don't, I'm going to be making sure to reference that information and hopefully get some really strong sinus and allergy medicine. I'm actually allergic to cats a little bit, interestingly enough, so I have a little bit of personal experience by that as well, but I don't have incredibly strong allergies to that. I apparently am wildly allergic to Florida. Like, apparently I am, because my allergies started in Florida and ended once we returned. Like, yesterday, it was there still, kind of, but today it's almost completely gone. And it's really crazy, because I never thought I'd be allergic to Florida, but apparently there's some sort of a plant or something down there that is emitting some kind of a pollen that I'm allergic to. I don't know what it is, but I apparently cannot go down to Florida again, down in that area, literally for the allergy side of things, because it was so bad, folks. The pressure was so bad, like, in my skull, that my eyes were watering and I was crying without, like, crying. Like, if y'all know what I mean. Like, I wasn't, like, crying out, like, sadness or anything, but tears were streaming out of my eyes like I was crying, because that's how bad the pressure on my sinuses were, that it was pushing the liquid out of my sinuses and right out of my tear ducts. I was like, that is absolutely crazy. Like, that's really the strongest kind of allergies that you can have, because I've had that before, and that's when you have, like, terrible allergies, is when your eyes are, like, watering so badly you're practically crying. And I was like, man, that is rough. Like, I absolutely hate those kinds of allergies, so I will not be going back down to Florida anytime soon. But let's see. Uh, let's see. So Dan Metcalf said, "Yeah, dude, if you were in Boca, which we were." Yeah, we were actually in West Palm Beach, so close enough. Let's see, in Boca, the climate zone is considered literally tropical rainforest. Yeah, it actually is, for the large part, and I guess apparently I'm just really allergic to that kind of stuff. But anyways, I do thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that quite well indeed, about the allergy side of things. But hopefully we're all over the allergy soon, and we're getting right back into work and working hard. So a huge thanks to you so much once again, Bud, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a $14 Canadian super chat from Gary Toes. Hey, a massive shout out to you, Gary Toes, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running all the way from Canada. And Gary Toes said, "Great job, Enforcer." And hey, thank you, Gary, for appreciating the work. I hope that it was a good show tonight without a co-host. It's always a little bit interesting how the format works with that, because there isn't anyone that gives me like breathing room, so I literally have to power through the whole thing and just monologue the entire thing, which is very straining on the vocal cords. But beyond that, I hope that you were enjoying it greatly, Gary Toes. I hope everyone was, because it takes a little bit of extra work to do streams like that. Not an exceedingly high amount to the point that's like mental breakdown levels of like stress, but it is a little bit more stressful and a little bit more strenuous, because not only am I having to focus on the actual delivery of the show side of things, but I'm also having to work on the nitty-gritty details of everything in the background as well simultaneously, which usually is Matthew's job, not mine. So a little bit extra to work on there. So I kind of have to streamline things, like not really do a lot of polls. Usually, though, like caveat to that, usually polls are actually pre-made before the shows. Matthew also makes his before the show. And if I'm running something solo, and I know that I am, I actually make my polls before the show as well, and have them in like a Microsoft Word document, so that way I can just go and copy and paste them straight on into the poll creator on our dashboard, and then I just throw up the poll. It's a lot easier that way, and it makes things much more smoother on the administrative and like technical side of things, but I didn't get to do that tonight because I only have 1 minute, so I really didn't have time to do any of that. But I'm still glad to know, Gary, that you really appreciated the show, and that it ended up being a pretty decent one. So thank you so much for the compliment on that. And so with that, thank you so much once again. Hope that has addressed that well. And moving on from that, we have a $10 super chat from Monsieur Gaston. Hey, and a big shout out to Monsieur Gaston for supporting the channel and helping it to keep on running. And Monsieur Gaston said, "Good job running solo, Enforcer and LSA." And hey, thank you so much for the support, and thank you for appreciating the show running solo. Doesn't happen often. I don't think it'll be happening again tomorrow. But nevertheless, I do thank you massively for enjoying the show being run solo, because as they always say, the show must go on. And that actually is quite coincidental right there, because Andrew L. just threw in a 5 and said the show must go on. And yes, the show must go on. Because if it wasn't for folks like y'all, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And I consider daily uninterrupted news coverage to be an incredibly important facet of what this channel is. Some people kind of lackadaisically go about it. And while we just got done with a 5-day trip where we weren't here for 5 days, when we are here, I consider it to be wildly important, unless if it's just physically impossible for me to do it, to be able to run the show 6 days a week like we always promised to y'all. This is a very big thing to me. And so the show must always go on, and I got to thank you greatly for appreciating the show being run solo, Monsieur Gaston, and hopefully it was a show worth watching tonight, I would hope. But still, a huge thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are moving on to the next one, which is a $15 Australian super chat from Duncan VR. And Duncan VR is an absolute legend of the stream from the land down under, in Australia of all places. And he throws in the animal noises. Sadly, we don't have Enforcer Matt here to read him tonight, but I can read him in his stay. Ba 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 ba. Oh man, I couldn't get my trip to DC. Aw man, no one funded my new office chair. Aw man, I might as well give up. I lost another 25 subs. Ba moo, ba quack. Get well, Enforcer Matt. Ba ba moo moo. But I do thank you for the support, Duncan VR, and throwing in the animal noises. If it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to hear those animal noises. And we always appreciate you massively for throwing them in. And I'd have to say, the hot dog man, he took a little vacation, honestly. I think it's a permanent one. Let me go check on him. Because he said, I'll be here from time to time, but I won't really be able to do this full time because I'll be working on, running my thing. Oh, wait a minute, no, actually, he's back at it again. Apparently, he was able to get a little bit of traction today on a domestic political issue. So he was able to finally get himself, y'all, over 70,000 subs. So he actually appears that he may still have a little breath of life in him yet. But he'll run all of those subscribers off again probably in about 2 weeks' time. And then he'll be back to quitting and working at Shell gas stations. So with that, I do thank you for the support, Duncan VR, and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be here right now. That is a saying as old as time on this channel, but I always have to let each and every one of y'all know because y'all's support is significant, whether it be massive or small. And so with that, we are moving on to the next one, which is a $10 super chat from James. And James said, do you think Ukraine will try to take out the Crimean bridge when it gets the Toretsk missiles? It might actually try and take out the bridge when they get the Toretsk missiles, but it's a little bit hard to say. I don't really know if the Crimean bridge is a military strategic target anymore because they hype it up and they're always saying that they're going to hit it, but then they never really even attempt it. So I'm starting to doubt at this point that it's really a significant military strategic target and starting to wane in its importance or at least its necessity of being destroyed so far in the war. So I hope that addresses that well, at least in my opinion, James B, because while they might get the Toretsk missiles, they might find it more effective to use those on other targets than the Crimean Bridge itself. But still, huge thanks to you so much once again. And moving on from that, we got a $5 super chat from Uncovered Cube 7. And a massive thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And Uncovered Cube 7 said, I hope y'all get better soon. And LSA, and LSA, baby. And I gotta thank you so much for the support, Uncovered Cube. And I gotta thank you for hoping that we get better soon, because we will be getting better soon. And we will be better, and we will be back on air, and it will be like never before. Nothing that's ever been seen. But nevertheless, thank you so much once again. And long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die, Uncovered Cube. It never will. And moving on from that, we have a $5 super chat from Dave Wilson. And Dave Wilson said, I'm not a bot, LOL. Good coverage, brother. And I got to thank you for the support, Dave Wilson. I got to thank you for appreciating the coverage, brother. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, hey, we wouldn't be able to do the good coverage. You know what I mean? And you're not a bot. You're not a bot. You know why? Because bots don't have cash. Bots don't have cash. But still, a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And moving on from that, we have a $5 super chat from Clank. Clank, I'm a tank. Hey, is that some sort of a Warhammer 40k reference? Because I think I've heard that before. But still, I actually do think that might be a Warhammer 40k reference. Interesting. Very interesting right there. But Clank I'm a tank said, give some coverage to the Mexican men in Colorado arrested with 180,000 rounds of 308. Well, unfortunately, we don't really cover domestic situations like that. At least in your case, unfortunately, we don't. And also, I haven't really heard about that to even cover on that. Our entire thing is international news. We hardly cover anything domestic. And that would start to open up the grounds for political discussions and stuff. So I thank you for the support, but we just don't cover stories like that here on this channel. But moving on from that, also one other thing, Clank I'm a tank. I don't like saying they're Mexican men. I don't know if they're citizens or not. Like, just saying this really quickly is like a little bit of a clearing the air here. If they're citizens, they can own however much ammo they want. Like, like there's no restriction. Like, so if they're Mexican Americans, it's like, well, like, are we now going to start saying that people are suspect because they own thousands of rounds of ammo? It's like, they have a right to have however much ammo they want. But I don't know. I mean, if they're like Mexican citizens that are inside of America and then they have hundreds of thousands of rounds of ammunition, then that's a little bit of an interesting thing. But at the same time, you don't actually have to be a citizen of the United States, I think, to buy ammo. There's no background checks or anything involved in buying ammo. You just go in a store, and as long as you have money, and I think you're over the age of 18, you can buy all the ammo you want. But beyond that, it's like that doesn't really sound like too concerning of a story to me, because legally, I think they can buy it even if they're not a citizen. If they're not but if they are a citizen, then there's like really nothing to cover there at all. Also, let's see, Terrence Custer said, I read they were illegals. Were they illegals or well, they probably were illegals, but beyond that, I don't like the thing with that story is like it sounds like it would be concerning, especially if they were illegals. But at the same time, though, there is no restrictions on the purchase of ammunition in the United States as long as you're over the age of 18. So it's like, is it really that concerning with the story? It's like, no, because really, technically, I mean, while they're illegally here, they were buying the ammunition within the parameters of the law like anyone else would. I mean, there's no background check involved in buying ammunition. You just go and pick up a box and go pay for it. Where the background check comes in is when you're trying to buy firearms. That's when the background checks come in. And Andrew L. saying they're cartel members. So apparently the story's coming together that they're illegal cartel members that were in the side of the United States with about 180,000 rounds of ammo. A little bit interesting to hear about that, but I really don't know how the U.S. To be honest with you, I'm completely ignorant on the story. I was just trying to make a caveat there to be a contrarian, but with all that put together, there still really isn't much to respond on that with. And I'm not trying to like mitigate the story or anything, but the thing is that I'm a huge gun person. And also J-Bag will say it was for the cartels, 180,000 rounds. J Bagwell, do you know how much, what calibers? Was it like multiple calibers or was it all one caliber? Because I'm interested now, because now the story sounds like it's a really interesting, fresh one. Because now it sounds like all the caveats I was trying to give don't really sound like they would apply too well. But very interesting here. So it appears that they were trying to do a little bit of an of munition smuggling little operation, but still, like from what I would know, because just for folks to know, and some people immediately throw me in a political group for this, but I own a good amount of guns, a lot of guns, and I shoot a pretty good bit. I'm fairly accurate. 308. Holy smokes! 180,000 rounds of 308. That's like I think right now that's like $1.25 a shot. So they had like $250,000 of 308. Like if I'm getting that right, Jay, they had $250,000 rounds. That is insane. Like $250,000 worth of rounds. That is insane. Okay, yeah, that's definitely like illegal right there, because no one spends $250,000 on 308. Like nobody would. That is insane. That is crazy. Honestly, I would be really interested to see what 180,000 rounds of 308 looks like physically in one location. That probably is actually pretty cool. It's probably like a giant like a cargo pallet that you would see like a forklift moving around a warehouse somewhere. But that is absolutely nuts. That's an interesting thing. From what I know, though, so once again, I shoot guns a lot. When you go into a gun store, you just buy the ammo. Like no one checks your identity or anything. Like I've never been even asked anywhere in any gun store to show my ID to buy ammo. I just buy the ammo. So if they were buying all the ammo that way, I mean, I guess they didn't do anything wrong, but I still don't know where they get 180,000 rounds of it in one swoop. Unless they were stockpiling it for years, or if they were like buying it in bulk like Costco guys or something. I really don't know, but that's an interesting story nevertheless. It's just that we don't cover stuff like that on this channel, unfortunately, because now I'm actually really interested in that story because it actually sounds kind of crazy. But anyways, and also I saw Sluggernaut say illegal immigrants can't legally possess or purchase ammo in the U.S. Yes, that's true. But the thing is that nobody's checking. Like, there's no background check to buy ammo. So, technically they can't. But, I mean, if these illegals can speak English good enough, no one's going to ask the question. They're not going to be like, hey, are you a citizen? They're just going to be like, okay, it's like $25 for this box. And then they'll just pay for it. Because I've literally never seen anybody check an ID to buy ammo. Never have anywhere in Alabama. So, I would highly doubt that they would be doing that anywhere in any other state as well, from what I would know. But anyways, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least for now. Very interesting story, though, Clank Clank, I'm a Tank. Sadly, we don't cover those kinds of stories here, but still an interesting one nevertheless. And we also got a $20 super chat from Glock Who's There. And Glock Who's There said, Corgi fun, get well soon, Matty, and LSA. And hey, thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Glock Who's There, a legend of the channel. And if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And hopefully Matt will be better and he will be back on air soon tomorrow. But nevertheless, we will make sure to put that towards the Corgi Fund. Petting and feeding those precious baby Corgis because they're absolutely sweet. We love them to bits. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one, which is a $20 super chat from Greg Stevens. 1 second. I turned on the fan behind me and like the moving air agitates my throat, sadly, so Let me turn that thing off and just start boiling here. But Greg Stevens said, oh, that thing didn't turn off. It's rare I can afford to support, but I have been listening since the Ukraine war started and worth every cent. Love this channel, only go to war news. Can you discuss the acoustic wall art gift given to the U.S. Embassy during the Cold War? Oh, that's a cool story, Greg Stevens. That's actually a really cool and a really cool little historical story. And let's see. Hold up really quickly, though. Before I get to that, I see some people talking about the whole ammo thing. And let's see here. They said it was a van packed full. Let's see here. And I see some people saying when the in New York you have to show your ID to buy ammo. And someone else also said that there should be a limit on how much ammo you can buy as a citizen. I don't think there should be a limit. That's that seems really really wild to me that there would be a limit. I don't like that. But beyond that, that's interesting. Here in New York you have to show your ID to buy ammo, because here in Alabama you can buy ammo and no one checks an ID ever. So you know, a little interesting with that. But beyond that, getting back to Greg Stevens' question, I got to thank you so much for putting lock, stock, and barrel just faith in the channel. I thank you so much for that, and I thank you for supporting. And we always know that some people are, you know, more strapped than others to support, and that's why we don't, you know, try and pressure people to support. But I got to thank you greatly for the supporting the channel, because while we don't pressure people to support is the only way we keep this channel running, and folks like you make this thing a reality. So a massive thanks to you so much. And let me go pull up the Soviet, let's see, the Soviet U.S. seal, Soviet, wait, hang on, Soviet U.S. seal listening device. Let me go pull that up. The thing, that's what it was called. This is the thing. This is a replica of the thing. So basically, to really like narrow this thing down, it's a very unique kind of a system, actually. Completely non-electronic, but it worked, actually, we found out. This was the Great Seal Bug, or the Thing. It's more so known as the Thing. And that's why I wasn't going to type it in, because I knew, like, if I typed in the Thing, it would pull up the movie and not the Thing. So I had to, like, type in something else to get it. But beyond that, this is the Thing, or this is more so a replica of the Thing. Nevertheless, back in the day, early on in the Cold War, like this was in 1945, so this is technically before the Cold War even began. We were given, as a gift by the Soviet Union, this seal, this Great Seal of the United States, which is supposedly carved in a woodworking shop by orphans, as a gift to the United States of the long-lasting friendship between the Soviet Union and the U.S. So we accepted it, and we actually, in good faith, which was really stupid of us, because we should never trust communists, we put this thing up in the embassy, the Soviet embassy in the U.S. embassy in the Soviet Union. And it was bugged. The whole thing housed a giant listening device in it. So let me see if I can actually show you all this, because I'm gonna have to actually just read the technical description of it to explain how it works. Basically, there's an antenna on it, and the antenna is finely tuned to pick up the harmonic vibrations of sound. And when it does that, you can actually put out, I forgot, let me make sure to read exactly how it works. The front side was closed, very thin, membrane. In the middle of the cavity was a mushroom-shaped flat-faced tuning post with its top adjustable to make it possible to set the membrane post distance. Let's see, with parasitic frequency of the post head machine. The length were engineered in order to make the rebroadcast signal a higher harmonic of the illuminating frequency. Let's see. See the below, it counts different on whether holes were drilled into the beak to allow the sound waves to reach the membrane. Others say the wood behind the beak was undrilled but thin enough to pass the sound, or that the hollowed space acted like a soundboard to concentrate it. Nevertheless, someone could pretty much pull up outside of the embassy in a van, and they were able to actually listen in through this non-electronic, largely mechanical listening device on what was being said in the embassy. And a lot of classified stuff was said. This thing actually sat in the embassy on the wall for years in the ambassador's office. So there was a lot of classified information that the Soviet Union got access to through this little system. Nevertheless, we eventually found out about it, and it was a little bit of an interesting thing, because it was in there from 1945 to 1952, so exactly 7 years, like I was saying. And once they found out, they were like, oh my God, we've been bugged, and they've probably been able to hear a lot of classified stuff that was being told to the embassy. Nevertheless, that was That was a very interesting kind of a thing. I really don't know how to even describe this thing. It was just the most bizarre thing ever. It was really a massive security breach. But you see an example right here of how the membrane system worked for the large part, or at least how it existed inside of the Great Seal. This is at least an example of it at the National Cryptologic Museum, but still an absolutely insane kind of a system. It actually baffled people at the time when we discovered it because we really didn't understand how it worked, but as the decades have gone by, we've now really gotten down an idea of exactly how it worked, and it was actually a work of genius to make this thing and actually have it operational. But beyond that, a really wild kind of a system. So, with that, I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Greg Stevens, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running. We wouldn't be able to make it possible, and we also wouldn't be able to talk about a really cool story like the Great Seal bug or the thing, because this was actually like an incredibly cool little thing that happened. Although it was really a massive failure for the United States, at least as far as our security was concerned, it was a very ingenious kind of a system. But with that, it is time for us to move on along. Greg Stevens, massive thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I see a lot of people talking about 308. Everyone's still talking about the story of the cartels. And yeah, 762 is equivalent to 308. 762 by 51 and 308 are technically interchangeable. At least not in terms of the like pressures that are created by the powder inside the cartridge, but at least the bullets themselves, 308 and 762 by 51, are practically the same and can be fired out of the same rifle technically. But it does not mean that 762 by 39 is a 308 short. 762 by 39 is a completely different kind of a cartridge and largely a slightly differently shaped bullet. Let me go and show that 762 by 39. Because the 762 by 39 was more so a development of the 792 Kurtz round, because the Soviets got their hands on some of the Kurtz rounds that were being used for the STG-44, which I'll show you all right here. Then that would be the 792 Kurtz round. That is the 792 Kurtz round right here, and I'll show you all that. So this is a Kurtz round, also known as Lishtobi. But Lishtobi was studied by the Soviets, and they went, wow, that's neat. It's like a rifle cartridge, but almost like shrunken down to like an SMG. They're like, wow, that's sick. So you're like, what if we made one? So then they made this, and you can really see like where the similarities come in here between the 792 Kurtz and the 762 by 39. The Soviets swear up and down that they didn't copy the STG-44 and they didn't copy the Kurtz round, but the similarities are close enough that you generally could understand that this certainly, without a doubt, is a 792 Kurtz ripoff. But beyond that, the 308 is an entirely different kind of a thing. It's also called, by its technical designation, or at least its NATO designation, 762 by 51, which is right here. And this is your standard 308 NATO round, if you want to call it that. But once again, while they're both 30 caliber, they are entirely different rounds. Let me go see if I can show you all the bullet of a Kurtz round, or more, actually, 762. Let me see if I can actually show you all the bullet itself. Let's see here. Let's see, 50, steel core, green tip. So, this right here on the left, this is your standard 762 by 39 round. This is your standard the 762 by 51 millimeter round, and you can see that the dimensions of the bullets are actually different. Both of them are boat-tailed. You can see that back there, how they have the little swooping thing. That is a boat tail, and they both have the Spitzer head to them as well, where they're pointed. But beyond that, their dimensions are different from each other. So it's not a necked down, well, not really a neck down, but a shrunken down kind of a 308. Totally different cartridges for the large part, with different designs, pressures, and all that sort of a thing. But it's very interesting. Most calibers, though, a decent amount of them actually do fall within the 30 caliber realm. Like technically, if you want to make this argument that 762 by 39 is just shrunk down 308, you could actually make the argument that 762 by 39 is just shrunken down 30-06, because 30-06, just like 762, is a 30 caliber round. But anyone who looks at a 30-06 would be like, there's no way in hell that the 7.62-39 is a shrunken down 30-06. There's just no way. I mean, that just would never work. Like, that just doesn't make any sense. Because while they're 30 caliber, that doesn't mean that they're, identical or there was a design that's copied. It's just that 30 caliber is a pretty ubiquitous kind of a caliber to design cartridges in and also design rifles in, at least during the earlier part of the 20th century. Before that, rifle calibers were all over the place. A lot of them still remained within kind of like a 30 caliber range, but if we're talking like the 1860s up until the 1880s, 50 caliber rounds were actually fairly common. And then it started to get down towards around 30 calibers and 40 calibers towards like the 1870s to the 1890s. And then by the 1890s up until about the 1940s, 30 caliber reigned supreme in everything. I mean, 30 caliber could be seen anywhere. Pistols shot 30 caliber rounds, rifles shot 30 caliber rounds. There's really just a difference in the delivery system, the cartridge, and the shape of the bullet itself, but pretty much everything had a diameter around 30 caliber. Then after that, well, also there's like a lot of caveats to that. I mean, like 9mm did exist throughout most of that time as well. But generally, if we're like talking like what mainstream kind of calibers exist, something around 22 calibers and 30 calibers are just wildly common during most of the 20th century and really still are the mainstream for the large part for rifle cartridges. Like look at the rifle cartridges in service these days. It's either 7.62 by 51, which is a 308, which is a 30 caliber, or it's 223, which is 5.56, which is a 22 caliber for the large part, or it's 5.45, which once again is a 22 caliber. Everything is either a 30 caliber or a 22 caliber. It's really just those differences. That's it. So I hope that explains that somewhat well, at least from like the most layman kind of explanation I can give, which is wildly simplified and still getting a good amount wrong, because there's a lot more nuance to this than what I'm explaining. And actually, like while I was talking, I was actually cringing because like, oh, there's so much that needs to be explained there, like in the as a parentheses that I'm not explaining. That's just entirely wrong, but still. That's largely kind of like the prevailing thing for rifle cartridges, at least. And then Angel Arc brought up 45 ACP, and yeah, I didn't bring that one up, and that's why I was cringing. I was like, but there's so many other calibers. I mean, there's literally so many different calibers, especially when you get into pistols, which is a whole other thing that I'm just not even bringing up, that then completely throw out the explanation I'm giving. But for rifle cartridges, you can largely take it to the bank that there really isn't, like, at least in terms of military service weapons, everything is going to be around either a 30 caliber or it's going to be a 22 caliber. And that really prevails still to this day throughout most of the 20th century and up until now. But anyways, with that, I hope that addressed that the best I can. Still, that wasn't really a good explanation of it, and there was a lot wrong, and I could go on for a whole hour talking about that. But with that, it is time. Also, Michael Seaver said 54 is Mosin and Dragunov. That's a 7.62 by 54 rimmed, but that's still a 30 caliber. Let me go pull that up. 7.62 by 54 R. This is still a 30 caliber round. Which is just kind of crazy when you think about it. Like, everything ends up being a 30 caliber round. 30-06, 30 caliber. This, 30 caliber. Anything that's 7.62 is a 30 caliber. That's literally just the metric form of 30 caliber. So, let me see here if it says that somewhere in here. Because it should somewhere. It probably will say it. Let's see. Where in the world is it? Where in the world is it? It's a 30 caliber. I can promise you all that. It's a 30 caliber. It's a 30 caliber. But anyways, also Michael Seaver said, I agree. I just left the 7.62 off. Oh, sorry. I thought you meant that it was like a totally different thing. I misunderstood that. Sorry. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on into our next questions. But still, a huge shout out to you once again for the support, Greg Stevens, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one, which is By the Sea 760, who threw in a $5 super chat. And a massive thanks to you, By the Sea 760, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is from Ryan H, who threw in a 5. And Ryan H said, "Hello, enforcers. Wouldn't blocking the flow of water be considered a war crime under the Geneva Convention and LSA?" And I don't think so, because this isn't really a part of war. This is more so this is really more of a crime against humanity. It wouldn't really be a war crime because it's not really an extenuation of a war right now. This isn't being done in retaliation of a war that's happening. This is being done pretty much to create a war. So this doesn't really fall under a war crime. This is more a crime against humanity, which generally would still be dealt with by The Hague or some other similar form of an organization if it ever made it to that point. But really not really like it's a crime, but it's not a war crime. It's really more of a crime against humanity. It's kind of like how the concentration camps weren't war crimes, they were crimes against humanity, because it wasn't really a crime being conducted by armed forces against another armed force or a surrendering armed force. It was a crime being conducted against unarmed citizenry or civilians by an armed force, which doesn't fall under a war. Well, it does fall under a war crime in some instances, but generally falls under a crime against humanity in most instances, as kind of like a be-all catch-all kind of an umbrella sort of a thing. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Very good question, by the way, Ryan H. Now, I got to thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. We also have a 5 from Esteban Graves, who didn't throw in a comment, but I got to thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And Thomas Diarezio also threw in a 5 and said, "Great work tonight." And hey, thank you so much for enjoying the great work tonight, Thomas Diarezio. A little bit rougher doing it solo at a last-minute notice, but I hope it still turned out well nonetheless. And so a huge thanks to you once again, and I hope that addresses that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is from Krusty Hen 0, who threw in an $8 Australian super chat. Hey! And Krusty Hen said, "What is the chances that India and Pakistan will use nuclear weapons?" I have a feeling that the chances are low, generally because no one wants to use nuclear weapons off the bat. And so I would believe that nuclear weapons usage is a low chance. They most likely will engage in a major conventional war for weeks or months. That entire time, they most likely have negotiating teams going at it and trying to see if they can resolve it without getting to a nuclear conflict. So it will be a pretty bloody and it will be a pretty long war, but it will not be one that requires the use of nuclear weapons. They generally will hold that off unless if one side's losing really badly and they're having to fire off a nuke pretty much as a attempt to survive. That really would be how they would work it. So I would say the chances, in my opinion, are low. So hopefully that littles some fears that you may have about that, because nuclear warfare is always scary to everyone, even if it's on the other side of the world, like in India. But nevertheless, moving on from that, David Castillo threw in a $5 super chat. And David said, "Just wanted to let you know that you're doing great by yourself. Can't stay for long, but stay strong." And take away from the chat. And I got to thank you so much for the support, David. I'm glad to hear that a lot of people were saying that I was doing pretty good tonight on my own. I probably sounded stressed. I was stressed because I didn't have any time to prepare, but I'm glad to know that people really did enjoy it and thought it turned out well nevertheless. And so thank you massively once again for that. I hope that addresses that the best I can. And moving on into a live chat question. Let's see. Michael Sievers actually asked a very interesting question, speaking of live chat. Michael said, "You covered recently the armored vehicles of Pakistan and India. What kind of personal weaponry do they lean towards? Chinese, Russian, or NATO equipment?" And that's actually an interesting question. That would require us to pull up Indian military equipment and Pakistan military equipment of their armed forces. So let's go take a little look. So, skipping past all of the handguns and submachine guns, because we wouldn't really see those being used often, we're going to skip right down into their actual assault rifles, which will generally be the rank and file kind of a weapon that the infantry would use. So let's skip down there as well for the Indians, and let's see, we want to find the infantry weapons, which are right here. I want to make sure that we're going to the actual small arms, the rifles that would be used. So, it seems that they actually have a wide variety of service weapons. Actually, an incredibly large variety. Would be a logistical hell to handle. As far as it goes, it appears that Pakistan would have an easier time dealing with this logistical hell of having to provide 3 different kinds of cartridges to to 3 different kinds of service rifles, but generally it appears that the Pakistani armed forces largely uses platforms that operate off of the 5.56 by 45 cartridge, but there also are some Chinese-made Type 56 AKs that are also in service as well that required 7.62 by 39. So generally a mix of Soviet, Chinese licensed rifles for the Pakistanis, along with some Western rifles, M4 carbines, AUGs, and SIGs, SIG SG550s from Switzerland, which you can see right there. A little bit interesting to see. They actually have a pretty wide mix. On the other hand, for India, it appears that they have literally everything. But let's see what their standard kind of an infantry rifle is. So, it appears that one of the more common ones is actually the IB-1 Indus, which is this rifle right here, which looks like... I don't know what the hell it looks like. It looks a little bit like a Galil up here. It looks completely like an AK back here. Then it has the stock of a FAL. And then it also has the front barrel, kind of similar to an SA-58, which is a FAL. This thing is actually a little bit hideous. I think it looks bad. But they also use the AK-203, which is a licensed variant of the AK-12 for the large part. Created by the Kalashnikov concern, which is the modern-day company that is the predecessor or the successor of Kalashnikov. This appears to be one of their larger numbers of service rifles that they have right now. They also, by the way, these also use totally different cartridges. The AK-203 does not use a 5.45 cartridge. It actually uses 7.62 by 39, apparently, according to what they're saying here. Although this says that it's an AK-200 and 5.45 by 39, so I don't really know which one to take. Because this also says it's an AK-203. And that also says it's 7.62 by 39. So they also use the IB-1, which uses the standard NATO cartridge. So once again, kind of like Pakistan, they have to use Soviet standard cartridges, really of like the several decades ago. They're using the 7.62, and they're also using the standard NATO cartridge of the modern day. So a logistical hell, because you're having to provide different kinds of ammunition to different units, which takes a lot more logistical handling and management to be able to do that properly. But beyond that, honestly, it looks like everything is almost the same in terms of small arms, although the actual platforms are different. In terms of the cartridges, both of them use a mix of 7.62 and 5.56. But when it gets down into the actual details, it appears that they have some SIG 7.16s, which actually look very clean. That actually looks pretty nice. They also have a good variety of Tavors, but these appear to be in use for special forces and other groups like that, so not really commonly seen. The Indians also have M4 carbines as well, just like the Pakistanis, but these are used for special forces only. They also have, let's see, AR-M1s, which are produced by Bulgaria, and these things look terrible. They look worse than a normal AK, which is kind of a little tough to pull off. They also have the AKM. Like, what can I say? It's just an AKM. They also have a East German MPI KMS-72. That's actually pretty unique. Like, I never knew that the Indians had any of those at all. They also have VZ-58s. Oh my god, that actually is wild. That's actually kind of crazy. Like, they actually are running a bit of a museum in India, and then they also have T-91s from Taiwan. So, still, those are their service rifles, but once again, generally just a mix of 7.62 and 5.56 for both of them. So they're fairly matched in terms of small arms. Also, Jay Bagwell said that the Indian rifle looks a lot like the F&C. So let's take a look at the F&C. Yeah, you know what? I do see that, actually, Jay. Like, it really does. It looks just like it, actually. Let's go back up to that. It looks just like it from the receiver, well, ahead of the receiver. Everything looks identical to it, right there. But the receiver is definitely different. Like, this one has, like, an AK kind of a receiver to it, an AK style, like, with the dust cover on the top. The lower receiver having, like, that kind of, like, angled slant backwards, the further you head back towards the back of the stock. And the magazine release is the exact same that you would see on an AK back there. This one doesn't have that. I don't know what that receiver is. I haven't really looked at the F&Cs much, but fairly different looking with that. And it also looks like it takes a standard NATO mag instead of whatever that clear thing is. And then this stock. That stock looks just like a foul stock. Let me go get that. Let me see if I can get the one with that little bump on it. There we go. Right there. Like that little bump on the back of the foul stock, like for the cheek. Just like it right there. Really kind of a bizarre looking rifle. It's like a Frankenstein. It really is like a Frankenstein, Jay. Just like you're saying, of the FNC and then the AK. And then a foul buttstock. Just really like an absolute whack job kind of a rifle. I don't really know if I like it. But the FNC does look clean. Like, that actually looks pretty clean. Let me see if I can get a closer up picture of this thing. Oh, yeah, that is pretty cool. I'm very interested now on how the internals of that one works. Because it looks like a foul, but modern. Like, I don't know how to explain that. But it looks really neat. I'd like to get my hands on one of these. But anyways, moving on from that, thank you for bringing that up, by the way, J-Bagel. That was a really good catch right there. It really did look like that. I didn't know that. But moving on from that, I hope that does answer that live chat question well. And I got to thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And we wouldn't have been able to get an interesting little rabbit hole right there as well. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, David Castillo. I hope you enjoyed me addressing that live chat. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a $5 super chat from Johnny Rev. And Johnny Rev said, great trashy accent. And hey, thank you so much for enjoying the great trashy accents. We do all kinds of accents here on the show. And I'm glad that other people do get a little bit of a laugh out of them here and there. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. And I hope that does address that quite well indeed. And moving on from that, we also had a $5 super chat from Greg Stevens. And Greg said, can you speak about how Russia speaks by actions through the years? Portrait and general were really odd-timed. Putin should not be underestimated. And I got to thank you for the support, Greg Stevens. And also, I don't know what you mean about Russia speaks by actions. I'm not sure if you mean like outwardly or inwardly, but they generally do in most ways. They really don't do well in the diplomatic speaking side of things. It's always just, they screw themselves over really by just doing actions both internally and domestically. Well, both externally and domestically. That's what I actually meant to say. But I hope that addresses that somewhat well, or at least the best I can. And also, I would say Putin should be estimated for what he is. Honestly, Putin isn't really the mastermind that a lot of people make him out to be, at least from what I've seen over the past 3 years. The whole thing of him being like this great chess mastermind kind of a guy is really a propaganda machine of Russia's, because when you look at his actions and how smart they really are, they're actually mostly poorly planned and hardly thought out well at all, at least from what I've seen, or at least how I would play the game or deal with each situation. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are moving on to the next one, which is a $5 super chat from Andrew L., who asked, the show must go on? And exactly, the show must go on by all means, Andrew L. We have to keep the shows running because it's what we like to do. I love to do the shows. I love to run them. And also, it is our job to run these things. And so I always make sure to be here and running these things if it is entirely possible. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again, Andrew L. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one. And the next one goes to Plazat, who throws in a €3 super chat and says, can't they import water? Technically they can, but in the volumes that they would need, it would be completely impractical. Things like plumbing and sewage would just not work. I don't know if that's really a prevalent thing inside of Pakistan, to be entirely honest with you. But they couldn't really import the water that they would need in those kinds of volumes. So really not a good option, because they wouldn't really be able to afford that beyond the shortest of short terms. And so I hope that does address that well, and I think it once again for support, Plazat. It's a very interesting question. And moving on from that, we got a $2 super chat from Dubstep Kid 801, who said, tell Matt I'm sending him healing smooches. And I thank you for the support, and I will let Matthew know that. I will let Matthew know that, Dubstep Kid, and I got to thank you for the support and helping the channel to keep on rolling. We also have a 1 from QU4Z1, and I got to thank you so much for the support. Did not throw in a comment, but the support is greatly appreciated. And of course, it is folks like you who help to make this channel possible and keep it running. And so with that, we are on to the last super chat of the, actually the second to last super chat of the segment. which goes to Preacher, who threw in a $2 super chat and said, "Is the U.S. cooked overall?" I wouldn't think so. The U.S. has gone through tough times, and we'll get through it together, or we'll manage our way out of it. So I don't think the U.S. is cooked. I don't think the U.S. will ever truly be cooked. But I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the final super chat of the night, meaning that we're about to be moving on into the live chat segment. So if you've been waiting for this, make sure to start throwing in your live chats right now, because we're about to start getting into all of them, as many of them as I can get before we round this thing out. We have a $2 super chat from Sub the Gator. And Sub the Gator said, "Tell Matt I said duck allergies. He will get it." And I got to thank you so much for supporting Sub the Gator. I don't know what that means, but I guess I won't, because only Matthew will get it. But nevertheless, I do thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to tell Matthew duck allergies, which I'll be telling him right after the stream. And so with that, I hope that addressed that final super chat of the night the best I could, and it is now time for us to move on into the live chat questions. Hopefully we have a good amount of them here right now, because I'm not seeing a great deal of them in the chat right now, so hopefully we'll be seeing a couple pop in here soon, and I'll be able to get to answering live chat questions. But beyond that, while we wait for the live chat questions to come in, I've got to say that it has been a very interesting night. I got to thank everyone for watching so far. Surprisingly enough, a lot of people have watched the stream tonight. We had 8.7 thousand people here at the peak, and so far 55,000 people have watched the stream over the course of its entire runtime. And I'm, of course, entirely happy and appreciative to know that so many of you all have been here tonight and enjoying the channel, even if it was being run single-handedly, and that was a really ad hoc kind of a thing at the last minute. I got to thank you all greatly for being here, and I got to thank you all greatly for watching. And, of course, if you have any questions, make sure to throw them in right now, because I'm waiting for those live chat questions. I'm absolutely fiending for a live chat question. I'm sure that we're going to have an absolutely great one. And Marie LSA said, "Love you. You're doing great." And I got to thank you for that, Marie LSA. I hope I was doing great tonight. And Blaze Naomi said, "It's been a great stream." And I got to thank you for that so much too. I got to say, the positive comments coming in right now, they are really inspiring me. Maybe we can run this thing solo forever. No, I'm just playing. We'll have Enforcer Matt back by tomorrow, I believe. I think we should. But beyond that, Kenneth Lovecheat said, "Between India and Afghanistan, I think you mean India and Pakistan. I think maybe. I get the two mixed up as well. I've done that multiple times tonight on the show. Who has the better Air Force?" Let me go pull up the Pakistan Air Force. It's actually interesting. There's the Pakistan Air Force right there. There's their little seal. Let's go look at their aircraft, though. Whoa, look at that boiler. Let's see here. We're going to look at their fighting aircraft only. So, they have the Chengdu J-10. They have a decent amount of those. They also have the JF-17, which is actually made in Pakistan. That's their indigenous fighter program right there. Not bad from what I've heard, but it's also not the greatest. They also have F-16s, Dassault Mirage 3s, Dassault Mirage 5s, and also some Chengdu F-7s. Now, let's go look at the Indian Air Force, and let's see what they have. The Indian Air Force. Let's take a little gander, Let's take a little gander. Little trip down memory lane. Let's see here. Let's see. Let's see here. Where is their aircraft? Oh, yes. Here we go. They have Dassault Rafales, which are actually incredibly good. They have Hal Tejas. Whoa, that thing's actually pretty neat. I don't know anything about the Tejas, actually. Never really looked into it, but I'm not going to lie. The design is actually striking. That thing is actually pretty neat. I think India already has Pakistan beat, just for the fact that they're using Rafales and those. I don't really know their capabilities, but they look like they would be pretty decent, just by the... You know what, we need to actually look at the loadout of these things, because I can't really say that in good faith and just be like, it looks cool, so it's better, because that doesn't always mean everything. So, it has 9 hard points, and it can actually carry really any kind of missile. Oh. That is, that's interesting. That actually means that this is a pretty decent aircraft to have 8 hard points, or 9 hard points technically, but really only 8 of them for air-to-air weapons. 8 hard points. and it can actually carry really any missiles they want. So it's actually a pretty decent aircraft. So that was a little bit interesting. They also have some Su-30s, which I mean are good. I mean, it's not the greatest thing, but they're good. They also have MiG-29s. They also have Mirage 2000s, which are also pretty good. Better than Mirage 3s and 5s. They also have some Sepcat Jaguars, which are also pretty decent in the ground striking role. And then they have some MiG-21s. But in general, I would say qualitatively, the Indians actually have a better Air Force than Pakistan, which is a little shocking. I actually thought it would be pretty close. But looking at the actual aircraft that Pakistan has in somewhat larger numbers, they actually don't have incredibly good ones because they have about 80 Mirage 3s, they have around 90 Mirage 5s, and then they have around, let's see here, 140 F7s in service. So most of their Air Force is actually made up of like early third gens. Most of the Indian Air Force is made up of fourth gen or third gen plus aircraft. So just by the technological abilities of their aircraft, they're beating the Pakistanis by a pretty good bit. So with that, I hope that does address that well. Very good live chat question, by the way. And we also have some more that have come in. And it looks like I have a question that I really would be in the knack for answering. Dumb Wabbit said, "Have you seen the New Haven Railroad paint scheme?" Yes, I have, actually. I have seen that. The New Haven Railroad paint scheme. And let me go get this here. I think you're talking about, like, the really famous one that I know. Yes, I've seen it. I actually like it. It's actually pretty cool. I think that's the one you're talking about because that's the one on, like, the heritage units. But it's a pretty cool little kind of a livery. I like them. I think they're neat. So I would say, yes, I have seen these. Actually, though, I will say that my favorite livery, and this is because this is actually my favorite railroad, is the Louisville and Nashville. Which is services Alabama, and I know a lot of people are like, wait a minute, you like a railroad that services Alabama, but you want to move out of Alabama? Like, I like Alabama. We just want to change the scenery, but the Louisville and Nashville Railroad is actually it has some really cool paint jobs. I really like their ones for the Hummingbird and the Pan American, which are these right here. Very, very cool looking. It's like the Santa Fe's kind of paint job that they did for the Super Chief and the El Capitan, but more southern in style. I really think these are cool. And also another thing that I thought was cool was their solid black paint schemes, or the Black Cats is what they called them, which were like the paint jobs that they gave their first diesels in service, which looked really good. And then they also had this paint job, which is the blue and cream, but then they did black and cream, which I actually think it looked even better than blue and cream. Like, this is a really good one. And then they also did the gray and yellow, which is, I think, their phase 2 paint scheme, I think, or phase 3. I'm not really sure which one. But this is just, it looks cool to me. I generally don't like grays, actually, is like the main paint scheme. Like, I absolutely loathe Kansas City Southern's gray paint scheme. The Southern Belle one was all right, but the gray one was terrible. But this one actually looked pretty cool to me, probably just because it had that, like, bright yellow nose on it. And then there was also some other paint schemes that they had. Like here's the black and cream on a GP7, which looks pretty good. I like it. And then, of course, I can't go without mentioning Southern Railroads, without mentioning Southern Railway paint schemes, because everybody loves Southern. I don't know why everyone loves Southern so much more than L&N, because it's like, yeah, Southern, like, still exists, like, technically by name as Norfolk Southern, but Louisville and Nashville was such an important part, it still is, of the CSX company that exists today. So it's really kind of like sad that they really don't get any recognition, because it was such an important railroad to developing the South after the Civil War and turning into the economic powerhouse that it is today. So it's like, it's a little bit of a shame that they don't really, like, mention it much as the Southern. But this is like the Southern Railway livery is that tuxedo scheme, or it's the Southern Green, which you can see right here. Honestly, out of the two, Southern Green isn't that bad, but I really like the tuxedo scheme. I can see why a lot of people are really like suckers for the Southern, because like the tuxedo scheme is pretty clean, so I can't really like diss them for that too much. I think this is Kansas City Southern Belle scheme, which is all right. I think this is actually like the Southern Belle. Yeah, that is the Southern Belle scheme. I don't know what that one is. It's close to it, but that's not bad. But another cool railway that's actually pretty neat is Chicago and Northwestern. Let's see here. Northwestern Railroad. Let me go see if I can get y'all a paint livery for one of those. And not their modern diesels. I'm actually looking for a specific streamlined steam locomotive because it was really cool looking. Um, Dang, where is it? Like, do they not have a picture of it? Are you kidding me? I don't think they have a picture of this thing on Google Images. That's kind of a shame, honestly. Uh, they had like an advertisement for it further on up, but I think I'm just gonna have to go grab that. Uh, Dang, come on. That's a shame. That's a shame. That is a shame. I'm gonna have to show it to y'all up here. This streamlined locomotive, a lot like the Hiawatha. I think it was actually an Atlantic. But that paint scheme, I think they called it like the Yellow Jacket or something. It was a really cool looking paint scheme. The Chicago Northwestern didn't have a bad paint scheme to it. And let's see here. And also, Steve Judge, how do you pronounce the name of the capital of Kentuckyville? Louisville or Louisville? I actually say Louisville in Louisville. I actually say Louisville in Nashville. I just say Louisville. I think that's wrong. Like, most people say Louisville or Louisville. I just say Louisville and Nashville, so I probably sound like an idiot. But I get a lot of things like that wrong. I get, like, everything wrong. I called Mount Rainier for the longest time. And then I was talking to a lady on the plane as I was flying out to Seattle, and she said Mount Rainier, and then I felt like an idiot instantly because I was like, I've been saying it wrong the whole time I've been talking about this on the show, and now I just finally figured that out. I was like, oh my god. I was like, oh, it sounds so stupid. Oh, wait a minute, another one. Another good paint job. Y'all are going to love this one. The Burlington and Quincy Railroad. Not this one. Not this, like, red and gray thing. Cool looking, I will admit. But I'm talking about that stainless steel silver color. Look at that one. I mean, that is cool. That's actually a pretty neat paint job right there. Let me see if I can get it in a better light for y'all, so that way you can really see it in all of its glory. Right there. Really cool looking. I really like these. I think like that. I think that stainless steel kind of a color was a really neat look. It's sadly not around anymore. I don't even think these exist as heritage units. I might be wrong. I could be wrong on that pretty heavily, but I just think it's such a cool little job right there that they did with that design or that livery style. Because it's like what does it catch a good sleek look rather than stainless steel? Not many things do. So to have something like that, it's really, really neat. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that. Well, also, someone said, it looks like old Cybertruck. I couldn't sort it like that. Ban, I'm just kidding, but still, I think it looks neat, you know? But let's see. Well, if y'all don't like that, there is one more. One cool, livery thing. The Great Northern, or as I like to think of it, the Pumpkin. I think this is where BNSF got their livery, like, inspiration from the modern day was Great Northern, because it's Burlington Northern in Santa Fe, so it's the Burlington Railroad and then the Great Northern Railroad in Santa Fe all merged into one company called the Burlington Northern Santa Fe, but Great Northern had some really cool paint jobs and liveries for their trains, like this one. It's not bad. It's pretty cool. And then the Denver and Rio Grande. The Denver and Rio Grande probably had some like the coolest paint jobs of like the 70s before they merged with Union Pacific. They were like, I think, one of the last companies to merge with Union Pacific, but I really like that livery. And I also love their Heritage unit in Union Pacific. They did a pretty good job painting it up and making it look like just kind of like stylizing it on the Rio Grande style. But the Denver and Rio Grande has really, really cool looking paint jobs too. But yes, I have seen the New Haven paint scheme getting all the way back around to the original live chat. I did see it, and I think it was a pretty cool one. There are some out there that are really bad looking though, like Florida East Coast and Atlantic coastline. I think that they look terrible. You know what? I need to show y'all Atlantic coastline Railroad, just to show y'all what I mean. It's like a pimp mobile. It's in pink or purple or something. They're terrible looking. And then they moved on from this. You're like, you know what? Going around let's see, Silky Johnson isn't good for us anymore. So we're gonna switch it to black with a yellow line on it. Like black and yellow, like it doesn't look that good in this kind of a design. Like it would look good in others, but not this way. Like not this way. So you know they went and rebranded Silky Johnson to like the most corporate looking thing imaginable, and it was just a terrible thing. And what was actually kind of crazy about that is that most of the time that Louisville and Nashville existed, from 1903 to I think it was about 1973 when they merged to create CSX, they actually were majority owned by this railroad. Like pretty much Atlantic and L&N were the same railroad. It's just that Atlantic never fully absorbed L&N and pretty much allowed them to do their own thing. So that's why L&N existed that way. But honestly, kind of like a little bit crazy. But I absolutely hate the Atlantic paint scheme. I just purple just doesn't look good in this kind of a way. And then Florida East Coast is also pretty bad. Florida East Coast. Let me go get you all the actual Streamliner one. Let's see here. I think this would be the best. It's just kind of lame looking, like kind of uninspired. Like when Kansas City Southern did the Southern Belle thing, that looked cool. This one though, they like imitated it and it didn't come off that well. But Florida East Coast in blue is cool. But this one in like the red and yellow, it's not that good. Honestly, a miss in my opinion. But anyways, with that, I hope I addressed that well, because I went rambling on for a really long time, like 15 minutes maybe, about trains, and I don't want to hold y'all here for that long on that. I know we have many more questions, and let's see here. How would you rate New Zealand's new battle rifle? We used to use the Starhawk. From what I know, the new battle rifle for New Zealand is I think it's like an HK416 variant. I think it's pretty good. I like them. I think that's a pretty solid option. And let's see. So I hope that answers that question well, Private Public. And Brian Wadicus said, Enforcer, how are your ears? My ears are doing a lot better. I think they've pretty much entirely popped, except for the left one, which hasn't popped entirely yet, because my right ear is back to snapping and crackling a lot. So it seems to be back to normal at this point. So hopefully my left ear will be fine by tomorrow, and it will all be well behind me at this point. The whole severe pressure and not really being able to hear out of my ears and stuff. So I hope that does address that well. And we actually have another super chat to address from Johnny Rev, who threw in a 5 and said, so you think that flying Russian was caused by coil or leaf springs? Entirely coil springs. Leaf springs would have never done that to him. Leaf springs would have flung him out like a slingshot, honestly, like the fella deserved. So I hope that does address that well, and I thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. It was a very good question, I have to admit. And so with that, we are going to be moving on to the final question of the night, because we're not getting an incredibly large amount of questions right now. No fault to anyone. I mean, you know, everyone was asking great questions earlier in the stream, and I think a lot of those people have left by now. So like the amount of people who still have their questions unanswered that are here right now, they've been halved, so we're not getting as many of them. So we're going to be rounding out the stream right here on a great question, because we're getting a trickle of great questions instead of a flow of them. So I want to make sure that we don't have a lot of lull time here, and I'm not trying to, you know, just like fill the time for more questions, and make sure that we leave it on a great one. So we have a live chat question from Dimming Fanslaw, who said, Enforcer, do you have any model trains, HO scale, etc.? You have an uncanny knowledge of paint schemes of locomotives. It's kind of my thing to have an uncanny knowledge of everything I get into. I'm really one of those people. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I'm probably on the spectrum. I've just never been tested for it, because I get, like, obsessed with stuff. When I get into it, I'm into it, and I'll learn everything about it, and that's why everyone's always like, wow, how in the world does he know everything? And then sometimes the information will also be off in some ways a bit here and there. Well, it's because at some point in my life, I was really, really invested in that thing, and I would learn every single thing I could about it. And so most of the time when I'm talking about things on stream and y'all are hearing me like just belt off info, and then here and there some of y'all who really know the intricacies will hear that I get a thing or two wrong, it's because I probably was really into that 6 years ago or 10 years ago or 13 years ago, and I learned and read everything about it, and I'm trying to remember all of that now and shoot it off on stream, and I'm probably forgetting a thing here or two here or there, or a specific detail here or there, getting some things mixed up. But that's kind of how it's always been with everything. But I've always been into trains, like ever since I was a really little kid. I don't know why. Like, for some reason, some people just get attracted or interested to specific things. For some reason, mine's always been trains. I was obsessed with them as a kid. And my mom would take me, back when we lived down in Montgomery. I'll actually show y'all, like, where my interest in trains was, like, born. It was generally born by Thomas the Tank Engine. I'm just going to be honest with y'all. Like, really, really got obsessed with Thomas the Tank Engine as a kid, and was really obsessed with Thomas the Tank Engine, like, all the way up until I was, like, 12 or 10, I think. But where I got obsessed with trains was right down here, right in the Montgomery rail yard. This rail yard right here. This is where I got obsessed with trains. I remember that my mom would take me in the minivan, and she would put me in the back seat or the front seat, and she would drive me down here, and we would go and look at the trains, and we would pull over at these little parking spots right here, and the train would come around this corner right there, and it would pass us by heading on into the yard, or to the engine shop, or on out of town. Or they would actually pass back here, which I always thought that this little area was like a really cool spot, because it would seem like it was just off in like nothing, but almost the same spot. And I would watch the trains pass. And back then, in the early 2000s, was a really good time to actually be a train spotter, like kind of being honest, because being a train spotter back then actually meant that there was some unique stuff passing by. I didn't know it back then because I was a little kid, but back then, Conrail had just been merged with CSX, so there were all kinds of Conrail trains still moving around, and there's a whole bunch of older CSX locomotives and rolling stock that existed that doesn't exist anymore today, and so I got to see all of it. And I was always just so enamored and so interested with all of it. And one thing that I was always interested in, and I still remember it to this day, because they rolled through town a lot when I was a kid, and then they stopped rolling through a while ago after that. But it is the let me go make sure to type this in specifically so that you can see close to what I saw. The CSX Tropicana trains. For some reason, they always used to roll through Montgomery. They stopped, like, at some point while I was growing up, because I never remember seeing them again. And I've before we moved out, I'd still kind of, like, pass through there in my own car, and I never saw them again. But when I was through there, there were these CSX Tropicana trains, and it was nothing but refrigerated cars filled with Tropicana orange juice. I'm not even a big fan of orange juice, but I always remember seeing these trains, and there would be dozens and dozens of these rail cars, just with Tropicana on the side, and that giant orange with the straw in it. And I always remember that as a kid. I would look at it. I'd be obsessed with that thing. I'd be like, "Wow, it's an orange juice train," and so I would just like love this thing. Always remember those. That's like one of the most vivid memories I have of a train ever in my life. Was the juice trains of the Tropicana Juice Company, the Orange Juice Company. So I would just sit there and watch those, and also we would drive by the engine shops, which they've been reducing in size little by little every year. But we would pass by the engine shops, and this was like a cool treasure trove, because you could see all kinds of cool little locomotives out here. Let me see if I can actually show y'all the Wayback Machine. So it goes all the way back to 2013. So this will kind of show y'all a little bit of what it looked like back closer to when I was a kid. So this would have been about the time, actually 2013 would have been about the time that I was 11 years old. So this actually would be about the time that I was getting out of trains a little bit. So let's see. Oh, actually, I got to keep that open right there to show y'all what it really did look like. Yeah, there we go. 2013. That was the time. So let me see if I can show y'all a locomotive or two that would be sitting around out here. Let's see. Maybe there will be one out here. That just looks like a GP30 8 or a 40. But they used to have loads of them sitting out here. Like, there would be tons of them. And as time went by and the years went by and Montgomery's prominence economically waned off pretty much to nothing, the amount of locomotives that would be sitting here at these engine shops started to decrease more and more and more. And I remember when we moved out of the Montgomery area, which was about 5 years ago to the day, there was hardly any locomotives here. That would have been about 2023. And this picture actually shows a decent amount of them. But by then, a lot had changed. Loads had changed here in Montgomery. But I always remember that that was the place where I got really interested in trains, and I still remember that place really vividly, and this little syrup company that's right here. Y'all can actually see it. I forgot. Whoa, what is going on here? They're ripping up ties from somewhere. Huh. They have a maintenance of way vehicle right there. I wonder what they're ripping up. Let's see here. You can actually see it on satellite right there, too. What are they ripping up? It's got to be something around here. Huh. Really interested in that. I'll have to look at that off stream and figure out what they're actually ripping up and where. Could be this. Because that looks like, well, they actually didn't rip that up. They just abandoned it. So, oh, well, huh. Yeah, I'll have to look into that a little bit more. But anyways, I hope that addresses that well about the whole, like, how do you know about the liveries and the paint job thing. And also to answer the question, yes, I actually do have some model trains. I've been getting into that a little bit lately. And, you know, since my favorite railroad is Louisville and Nashville, I'm a little bit of a sucker for Louisville and Nashville stuff. So I have a couple of Alco RS3s in the Louisville and Nashville livery. And then I have a U25, a GE U25. And then I also have a Southern Railway F7 with the B unit. And then I also have a Chicago and Northwestern GP, I think it's a GP35, in that livery for that era. So a little bit of foreign power to make things, you know, a little bit more neat. But I don't have a layout yet. I just have honestly like a demo rail that I just kind of run them on here and there. But I'm planning on building a little layout for them eventually. I got to kind of figure out when and where I'm going to do that. But I'm going to make a little layout that's going to be inspired off of a 1960s Wetumpka, Alabama. You know, just considering that's my hometown. So I'll be making a little layout of that, trying to incorporate like a 3D printed version of this depot right here, and make it look like the 1960s, because I was able to get some reference pictures, which were really hard to track down, of this area of Wetumpka in 1960, and also I was able to find, crazily enough, the actual track schematics for Wetumpka, Alabama from that time, from that time frame. So I'm trying to do that. I'm trying to figure out how to make like a layout inspired by that, because that would be so cool. That'd be so neat. I would really love to make a layout big enough to actually not only include the Y junction that was down here at the depot and also all of the side tracks to serve the industries here, but also the Alabama Textiles Mill, or the Dan Rivers Textile Mill that was up here at this old football stadium and the soccer fields. Because this whole area used to be a giant textile mill back up until 1973, and then in 1975 they demolished it. So if I could make an entire layout to represent that, that would be neat. But let's see, and also Telescope 3 say you can make a layout that can fold up into the wall. You don't want it in the way. Sadly, we're leasing our place, so sadly I can't really like make it to where it would fold up into the wall, because, you know, it'd damage the wall, and they wouldn't like that. So I got to figure out a way to make it portable, because, you know, we're going to be moving out of here in like about 5 months from now. I got to figure out a way to make it portable if I'm going to make it here, and I also got to figure out how to set up the tables and everything else to make that work. But that's something I'm trying to do as like a little hobby project in the background. But to be honest, that's a tough project, because I don't have a lot of time off this show, and also off of working on the whole channel to do those kinds of things. So I just kind of have like locomotives, some rolling stock, and some basic tracks. And then I just kind of sit there and run them from time to time, and just kind of think, wow, that's really neat, you know? Like, it's like a miniaturized real-life version of the real thing. And beyond that, I really haven't been able to work on it much at all. But also, before we move on, one last thing. We have a $5 super chat from David Lansford, who said, and I quote, "Just saw some channel called Wild Siberia, some American dude that moved to Russia. And I thought I was the dumbest person I knew. Well, there's some people who always do some crazy things. He's probably getting hounded by the FSB every day he's there. But nevertheless, I do thank you so much for the support, David Lansford, and helping this channel to keep running. And that is actually a very interesting way to end out this stream. Almost right on time for a 3-hour and 30-minute stream. We're at 3 hours and 7 minutes. And I got to thank you all so much once again for watching. It's been an absolute honor and a pleasure to have all of y'all here tonight, and I hope that y'all have enjoyed this stream significantly. If y'all have, please make sure to subscribe. Please make sure to like and comment, because if it wasn't for all of y'all, whether y'all were supporting or not, we would have never been able to make this channel reality, and we wouldn't have been able to make it a reality for years now. I thank you all so much once again for watching, and we will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of news from around the world. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die.